No, just testing. Can Instagram hear me okay? Just give me a thumbs up in the chat before we get going.
And also, because I'm running live, we're doing some things. We're working some things, people. Because I'm running live, I just started the live on Facebook as well. So Facebook, if you hear any feedback or anything sounds off or funny, let us know, please. We'll get this thing going.
Perfect. Definitely. Well, I think everybody's good on my side, Mike. So I think we can get to it.
Awesome, awesome. My intro is always, "What's up, beautiful people?" So we got people rolling in on Facebook as well, and just really,
Right.
man, I want to first of all thank you, bro, for just the connection we've had, and I guess I don't know, no more than 4 or 5 months. I want to say
Yeah.
um, it's
I
been
know.
short.
Wow.
It's been short, but at the same time, it seems like one of those things where I feel like it's that connection. When you
Hmm.
connect with the right people, it just happens. It's not forced; it just happens. And so that's
Definitely.
what happened with me and Lamar, and I'm excited about that, man. That we can partner on some things and just build together. And one thing for all of your followers that they'll know about you is that that's what you're all about. You're about that
100%.
getting things done. And I love
Hmm.
that, man. Every time I tune into one of your lives, it's always about talking about the business of life, and not all the extra stuff. And so I really love that, man. So just a little
Appreciate
intro. We'll do an intro first of who we are.
it.
I'll
Yep.
go first. I'll say the best
Go
for
for it.
last. I'm Mike
Go for it.
James. I'm Mike James. I'm the founder and owner of P&Z Life Coaching, and I'm a certified personal trainer, certified life coach, and my personal mission is to share my light, love, and positivity with as many people as I can in the time and space that I have. And so I'm excited just for today, the topic, what we're talking about, who I'm talking about it with. So
Yeah.
just a little bit about how we got connected. I met Limahl on Convos, the Convos app, with
Yep.
many other people that already made a great connection with. So I'm just excited, man. So yeah, that's who I am.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, yes, Lamar Mills. Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for that mini intro. But yes, I'm founder of Fortress Neverstone Group and the Mills Institute. And the Mills Institute is an education platform or institute for economics and education of the future. Fortress is a start of fintech, which probably talk about later another time. But yeah, I'm based in Leeds in the UK. And again, as Mike said, we linked up on Combos, which is a really cool social media application to build up conversations and relationships. And yeah, just even when you said, 4 or 5 months, I was like, wow, because we've been in this lockdown for so long. I'm just like, oh yeah, it has actually been that time. So um with this topic today, it was just one of those ones where I saw a post from Mike and it just hit me. And I think this time that we're in right now, we've really got to, discuss this because there's certain things that are happening that isn't cool. It's not cool at all. So, I mean, how should we kick this one off, Mike? Do you want to give
First
some
of all,
context to that post?
I love your humility, bro. You didn't finish giving your proper intro. Because it's one of those things like we have these titles, right? We have titles of how we categorize people,
Mm,
doctor, lawyer, whatever. And one of the
okay.
big ones, especially for that foundation, when you're talking
Mhm.
about this discussions and conversations and conversing about matters, one thing you left off is that my bro is an author. So, and
Right.
we're just going to speak it into existence, best-selling author, because again, I'm just started on the intro and the first chapter of the book. And already
Mm,
just from our connection and seeing your Instagram and what you do and what you put out, I'm
mhm.
going to say, I'm just going to speak it best-selling author because it's great, even if you read the back of the book. But Lamar is an author, y'all, luxurious
That's right.
chores. So I just wanted y'all to see that. Again, let me put that down for my Facebook people. And then a little
Yeah.
disclaimer as well. Let me put this out here. We met a little bit and talked a little bit pretty much the course of all day today, just planning and getting some things together. So if you see Lamal and I looking in different directions, it's because we're running two different streaming devices and two different services. So I'm on
Yeah.
his Instagram for all my Facebook right now. So if
Mm-hmm.
you see me looking here, Facebook, I'm looking at that Instagram and looking at the comments, keeping up with that. And then
Mm-hmm.
he's also on my Facebook from our stream here. So just wanted to let you all know that if in case you see us looking
Yeah.
back and forth. Before we jump into it, bro, just how are
Mm-hmm.
you doing? You know, how are you doing with quarantine, everything going on? Because I love to make that impact to get some air out first before we get into these topics.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been okay actually. I had a birthday yesterday, so feeling good. It was a chance for some reflection, but just generally over these past few months, I decided to, or I made a decision where I wasn't going to let any type of restrictions or quarantine or lockdown just affect my goals and plans for this year because there were some things I really wanted to get done, and I've just stayed on that trajectory because most of the time I'm working from my home office anyway, so day to day didn't really change too much for me, but other than a few deals that I was working on where I physically had to go out and check on it. But generally, I've just really just been trying to remain positive, just trying to remain focused on the things that matter because it's easy to get distracted on everything what's going on, and especially what we're going to talk about today. There's more additional things which plays a big role in that. So I've been cool. I mean, what about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of along those same lines.
Mm.
I was talking to someone just the days and the time start to run together. So you're like, wait, this
Yeah.
week, last week? I think it was last week
Uh-huh.
I was talking to someone about that. And I was just saying how it's kind of a roller coaster where you
Mm-hmm.
you you seem to get in these pockets of focus to where
Yeah,
you know what's going on. You got it. For me, it's that focus of the business and building the business, and then also
for sure.
just what I'm all about. That's health and fitness. Eating,
Mm-hmm.
exercise. So you get in these pockets, and then you kind of fall off. So you have to, give yourself a little kick
Yeah,
and
let's
get back
pull it
on.
back.
So it's been that. But in terms of I think the most important part of how you're feeling and how you're doing just from a day-to-day basis is the mind, controlling
Mm-hmm.
that mind. And that's been good, man. I've been in a great place to where it's one of those things, the first couple of weeks of quarantine and everything going on,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got out of my routine in terms of my reach, with social media and doing the videos and all of this. And so it
Yeah.
got to the point where it's like, Mike, do what you've been doing. And this is
Mm-hmm.
where if you're on a mission to share your light, love, and positivity, this is where it matters most during a time like this
Definitely.
when people are shut in, they're not out, we don't have that human contact, that connection. I
Yeah.
think people are finally realizing the importance of that human connection. Even
Mm.
the people that you don't like, you know, that
Yeah.
connection, man, you need all those energies. So for me, it's been one of those things where I've been sound. I tell people all the time, I've been bragging about it. One thing I've introduced is yoga back into my fitness
Yeah, I saw
routine.
that.
And that's been
Mm-hmm.
great, man. Doing that multiple times a week, working with an instructor, to start the week off on Mondays has been amazing. So that's helped with my mental and just,
Mm.
keeping that focus, so to speak.
Nice.
So yeah, man. Yeah, definitely.
Good. Good.
So
Good.
for everybody watching, man, the
Mm-hmm.
post that bro saw on Instagram was one I shared, and it's one that my wife shared, and I looked at it and I was like, whoa, it stood out to me. And even by seeing the comments and reaction and the captions on people's shares when they
Mm.
share it, you can tell that it's impactful and it's powerful and it's something that needs to be talked about, because I think so many times we're silent on issues that really matter and count that we
Yeah,
should be
definitely.
talking about. And until we discuss these things on a worldwide front and scale, I think we don't see true progress. And so
No.
this was a quote. And another disclaimer, I forgot, bro.
Mm-hmm.
So on my Facebook, I posted that this video would start at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. And here's the here's the issue with always trusting Google or technology. I did the conversion of GMT to CST, Central Standard Time, and it said 12 p.m. However, I
Mm.
found out that was wrong when Limahl messaged me about 10 till 12. The conversion, that the actual conversion with this daylight savings time and all that. And I was like,
Mm.
uh-oh.
Yeah.
I told my wife I should have just asked him what time is it there now instead of Googling and all that. So for everybody on the Facebook and everybody that's watching from my Instagram, that's why the discrepancy. So we met in the middle though. I think we started right at about 11:30 my time, which
Exactly.
would be
5:30
actual
my
to at
time.
5:30 your time. So
Yeah.
so we met in the middle.
Apologies, guys. Apologies.
Yeah, so
Apologies.
apologies for that for everybody watching on all the streams. So here's the quote in the post that
Let's get to it.
caused this conversation, jump into it, and the catalyst of what we're doing right now today. The quote is just it's a white meme. It's a white meme, and the quote on there is, "Dear non-black friends, I'm paying attention to your silence." Again, dear non-black friends, I'm paying attention to your silence. So, boom. I appreciate Limahl because he reached out to me, and I think what you said. I think you said this is serious, or
Yeah, I said,
I forgot the
ouch.
exact. Yeah, you said ouch first, and I
Ouch.
was like yeah, and so we dialogued back and forth, and he was like, man, maybe we should do a live. And for those who follow me on like Facebook, I do these lives often where I do the bro studies with my bro Brandon, and so it was one of those things that was like, yeah, you know, I'm all for it because I love to talk and I love that connection with people and just to give that space and that place. That's what I always say for dialogue to happen. So that is the quote, and that spurs on the topic of discussion for what we're talking about today. So, dear non-black friends, I'm paying attention to your silence.
Yeah.
Heavy.
Yes. Well, I mean, even when I message you that, and again, disclaimer, I think I've commented on this on a few times, and I feel like we're in that age now where you have to put a disclaimer out before you say anything. You got to say things without people taking massive offense to it. So again, the whole everything was happening at this present moment with the pandemic, with these racial onslaught, with the killings of Black people, unarmed. It's just like a culmination of things. And I kind of really noted on this a few months back where I said, look, the way how things are going, it's only going to take one small thing to just, spark that match, and it's all just going to blow up. Right. And when I saw that, to me, it was one of those things that it was just like somebody that dropped a big dumbbell on my foot, and I was like, ouch, like wow, right? Because let's just break it down. It says, "Dear non-black friends, I'm paying attention to your silence." Now, again, we didn't want to come on this particular live with that not being prepared and not having the ammunition to really back up what we're saying. And my thing was this: I was posting everything. It was my birthday yesterday, and I'm, trying to just be cool, but there's so much things going on. And so I'm talking to my girl about it, and having serious debate. And I kept seeing more posts come up. I was just like, wow, more stories coming out about George Floyd. And it was just a barrage of things. But then I noticed, and a friend of mine also said this similar thing, where he's like, no one's really like talking about this. Like, why is no one actually like posting this right now? Because if you saw that video of that man being murdered, I'm sorry, but that had to have like sparked something inside of you to really react and say something. And if you're going to be quiet, I understand some people, they want to just, pretend like everything's okay and they don't want to ruffle any feathers. But that's just as bad. And that's what really I got from that. It's just as bad being silent, because it's like, if you've got a friend that's Black, right? Let's just call a spade a spade. If you and I are Black men, right? I have friends that are white. I have friends that are Asian. I have friends, etc., etc., etc. That classic line, right?
Right.
But then, do you know what I mean? But it's like when it comes down to it, if you have someone that is, Black, let's just say, you would want to be like, oh wow, like, or at least let me share that and educate somebody else. That's just how I would think. So when people are not saying things, and again, this is not just some attack against white people. That's not what I'm saying here.
Right.
What I'm saying is that if you don't comment on this thing, if you haven't seen it, fair enough. Because I know there's some people that take the stance where they're like, I just don't want any negativity. But it's like, that's kind of like a cop out, because it's like, well, look how much negativity that guy got and died.
Mm, right.
And I didn't even see the picture after where there was the three guys behind. And I kind of figured it out when I watched the video, because the first guy who came up, he said something along the lines of, "Hey, like I told you, this is what was going to happen." Right at the beginning of the video, you couldn't see his face, but you
Mm-hmm.
heard the audio, and he was like, "Yeah, I told you this was going to happen. Like, you can't win that battle." But then when you see the reverse picture, and there's like three guys on him, so the guy on his neck was only one of three.
Right.
He's one of three. So I'm just like, that shocked me, bro. Where I was just like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's riots, because people are like, no way, you can't just keep doing this and then do it so blatantly.
Right.
That's a problem for me.
And I think that's one thing when you look at the layers of everything, right? There's never a right way to
No.
respond to an injustice, right? Because no matter what you do, someone has an issue with it. And I think I was talking about in a live video that I did yesterday, excuse me, I was talking about how it sucks and it's bad that you have to figure out what's the best way I respond to this, right? What's the best way I respond to this will be accepted by my
Mm,
people, by your people, your people. It's so much gravity, and it's a very close kin to victim blaming. It's like,
hmm.
okay, you're the oppressed, you're the suppressed, you're the broken, but I want to control and I want to control the narrative of how you respond and who's to say when it's wrong or right. And it
Yeah.
further divides us. It further
Hmm.
divides the people going through these things. And now you have to choose a side, right? It's like, okay, yeah, I choose a side with you. I choose a side with you who you're going to go protest. I choose a side with you who say, hey, let's pick
Yeah.
up arms and we're going to, eye for an eye. Or, hey,
Hmm.
I choose side with you, you're going to pray about it and be silent. And it's just
Hmm.
so much. And another thing real quick, because you can get passionate about these things. One thing
Yeah.
I failed to mention in our intros, for people, for your watch, my viewers, your viewers,
Mhm.
is where we're from. And I want to
Yeah.
that connection that was really interesting, even when I ordered your book that we didn't think about. So I was talking about the conversion earlier in the time frame.
Mhm.
So, bro, tell everybody where you're from, and then I'll tell
Sure.
everybody where I am.
Yeah, exactly. So I was born Leeds, United Kingdom, even though some of the audience, I know I don't sound like it, but there's a reason for that. If you read the book, you'll understand why. But so quick plug. But yeah, I'm born in Leeds, UK, United Kingdom. And brother Mike.
Yeah, so I'm all the way in Alabama, U.S., and it's so funny that that's the exact city where I currently reside. So in the Birmingham area, and so that's amazing. That connection right there, it's just little things. You get little nuggets. That's like, wow, was this
Yeah.
connection meant to be? But I
Mm,
just wanted to put that out there for people on both ends to know.
cool.
Also, what I like about it is that it shows you that this is not just um, what do they call it sometimes? It's not just to one place, but this is a worldwide
Mm,
thing because you're
yeah.
in the UK, I'm in the US, and no matter what it is, we still deal with the effects and the causations, all the stuff of the color of our
Hmm.
skin. And
Hmm.
so that's what we're talking about today. And I just wanted to make that connection as well.
100%.
So again, talking about that, and it's one of those things where people are forced to say, well, I'm not. One thing we hear a lot, I don't know, maybe if y'all hear there, what do we call it, across the pond, but let me know if
Hmm.
not. But we hear a lot in the United States, forget about it, it's in the
Hmm.
past, it's old, slavery is done, it's that's, why are you holding on to old stuff? And it's so
Yeah.
one of the narratives behind that is always get over it, or
Hmm.
I didn't own slaves, my parents didn't own slaves, or
Yeah.
you weren't a slave, your parents. And so it's one of
Hmm.
those ways where it's an immediate cop out to not have to deal with an issue that's glaring in our face. So is that the same kind of sentiment, there?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's growing up in the UK. It's one of those conversations that it's just not really had. Like when I really break down what I learned in history in high school, the things that I learned, and some of the things that I'll share because I feel like it's important. We didn't even touch the surface. I think I said a few days ago, I'm reading a book, The Rise and Fall of Great Powers, which I'm studying for the next book. Um, and the information is going back from the 1500s, and this is like European history, and even that we didn't learn. So really, when you start to break it down and you're like, okay, people don't want to have these conversations, like I said in the post, uncomfortable but necessary conversations, you have to understand why. And I've found that unless you go way, way back to the basics, to the foundations of where all of these, the timeline. It's like, imagine like the stories, the IG stories of the world. You're going
Oh,
back, back,
wow.
back, 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 and you're
Right.
seeing, it's like you're seeing, okay, what happened yesterday, the week before, etc. And I feel most people don't actually put the time in and do the work to really have a valid opinion. And with that statement, and I found some other ones just to tie it in and give it some context as well. So that was what we saw on Instagram.
Hmm.
Then I saw or read, because there's a mixture of groups, a mixture of audiences. Learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression. That's in the Bible, right? That's the first chapter of Isaiah. If you want to go outside of that, for everyone who may not, relate to that, then you've got the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. That was Martin Luther King. So you've got an Instagram version, you've got a biblical version, and you've got a civil rights version, right? So you got three contexts there to really understand what we're talking about.
Right.
And honestly, Mike, I've found that the topic of slavery, the topic of race, it's just not a conversation that is had enough.
Mm.
Hence why the silence probably pops up even more so now.
Right.
You know, that's just really what I feel is like this. There hasn't been enough conversation on the topic to really like address it openly. It's like
Hmm.
people kind of just shy away. It's like they're scared of saying, "Ooh, slavery." It's like, well, that's what happened.
Right.
it's history.
Yeah.
It's like just like how the UK went to war with the US, or the US went to war with the UK. It's history. It's like
Hmm.
people don't just not talk about it because it doesn't sound good or it's not nice. Like we have to have uncomfortable conversations.
Right. And I think that's the important part of it too, because a lot of times be, that block, that block that is put up, that feeling that you get, that warmth that you get when you want to talk about these conversations, that
Hmm.
is the issue that we need to tear down. Because
Hmm.
think about this in business and anything else, finances is those difficult conversations that give you the biggest breakthrough, right? And so
Exactly.
that cognitive dissonance sets in that when we talk about this, because we don't want to confront it, no matter
Hmm.
whether you black, white, brown, yellow, all of the colors, right, that they
Yep.
ascribe to us,
Uh-huh.
no matter where you are on that spectrum, it becomes shut down because you don't want to face a problem and an issue that's there. So we think
Yeah.
about, okay, this is in the past, slavery, racism, that's old, that's in the past. But we never think about the effects of 300 years of a system and the system that still is currently going and all of that. So it's those building blocks to a bigger problem, right? And until we break
Totally.
those down and talk about it, we won't get anywhere, right? We'll be just right where we are. So I think one of the things that you hear when you talk about these conversations initially, the first pushback is, okay, what's the solution? What's the solution? Well, what do we
Yeah.
do? Because it's like, well, shut up. What you gonna do about it? Instead
Yeah.
of say, okay, listen, before you cook a cake the first time, you don't just say, hey, what is it going to look like? What is it going to taste like? No, you got to
Mm.
preheat the oven. You got to go look at the ingredients. You got to get the butter and the eggs, however you make a cake. It's a
Yeah.
process, right?
Hmm.
And so we're talking about a process that I don't know how long it takes to make a cake. Let's talk about an hour for some
Yeah. It
recipe,
will take
right?
an hour.
So let's just say an hour. Okay. Prep mode. We're talking about something that people say 300 years of that, but I say at least 2000 because we're talking about eras and
Hmm.
ages of a system that is going on. So jumping into it, you talked about something like the foundation of things. So I guess the first thing,
Yeah.
one of the things in the bullets that we kind of both had is
Hmm.
the question of what is racism. So what
Exactly.
is racism?
Well, I mean, this is really where you have to really go to school and break this down. And one of the person or people that I admire massively is Dr. Claude Anderson, who, in my opinion, has done so much research on this matter,
Mm,
historical research, economical research, and with his, positions that he's had, he's someone that is qualified and has been talking about these type of topics for 6 decades. So
Mm.
out of most people, that's the person I'm going to listen to when it comes to things like this, because the information that he's presented makes a lot of sense and he's got the historical facts to back it up. Hence
Right.
why we've got all these notes, because we didn't want to just give the people, this conversation, which is what is very, very common today. People want to just have conversations, but not actually back it up with the stats. So, in his breakdown, what is racism? That is the power relationship between groups of people, right? Whereas one group has more resources, more leverage, more everything, and can then utilize that to manipulate another group. So when you go back into say, the 1500s, the 1600s, and you actually start to see where this whole concept of racism come about, that's when you get the answers. So going back, in the 1500s, it was mercantilism. So entrepreneurs, right? People just doing trade, selling things back and forth, rice, cotton, silver, gold, all of these just general commodities. It was
Mm-hmm.
mercantilism. But it was only until when Henry the Navigator in the 1400s went to the west coast of Africa, found a couple slaves. And again, for full disclosure here, there were some things that black people were doing wrong at the time, right? They wasn't really respecting their own people fully. That's why they just give a few slaves to few of these, European travelers. But at that time, it wasn't really a problem. So they would take the slaves, they then give the slaves to the Pope as a gift,
Mm.
and it was like, oh, cool. Then the Pope later was like, oh, yeah, you can have the whole of the west coast of Africa. And that's when the agendas really started to kick in, because there was like, well, we need to get the resources that are in this other place in the Americas, where Christopher Columbus, quote unquote, found. That's all I'll say
Right.
on that. Right? So he's
Right.
gone there and
One of the
found this.
one of the most awesome fairy tales in our history, our
Yeah.
world history.
you know So these certain things happen, and then they're thinking, okay, well, how are we actually going to get the resources, the gold, the silver, everything that's in the Americas, and actually do it? Because the Europeans essentially, they was focused on um, the naval route, so that it was really into maritime and ships and guns on the ships and all of this stuff, because they were trying to be more competitive. Key
Mm-hmm.
word here, in the mercantilism, right? They wanted to, because you look at the history, and most of the European countries, they were fighting each other, right? So you had Spain fighting France, or trying to take over France all the time. Your England just like trying to hold the fort. They were the leaders, obviously, for a long, long time, from the 900s, 946 AD, right? Up until like 1500s, 1600s. That's when they was, on top.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously a few hundred years after that. But they were fighting against each other, and it was always like a
Yeah,
competition.
barbarianism, thuggery,
Exactly, exactly. They were just going on wars,
chaos.
80 years, 30-year war. Like, yeah, it don't matter how much money. That's how Spain fell off, because
Mm-hmm.
they'd spent too much money and they couldn't actually fulfill their duties to try and take over or hold on to the territory. So when you break that down, it was competition, right? Always. But then when they switched the focus and it's all right, we're all going to try and compete and get the resources from the Americas, that's when you got the enslavement of black people, right? So racism comes from the word race, to compete, right? To get from one place to another. So when people say racism all the time in conversation, now that's racist. From Dr. Glenn Anderson, my hero, he says you can't prove racism on an individual. That's like being prejudiced. You're
Mm-hmm.
discriminating that person. But you can't prove racism just on one person. It's based on a group. And in the work that I do now in finance and investments, it's like every time I look through data and statistics, we have an institute called the Office of National Statistics, and when they refer to race or races, it's group. It says the black group, the white British group, the Asian group,
Mm-hmm.
mixed black group. It's always group based.
Right.
So I think just the actual real meaning has got people confused, because when situations happen like what we're going to talk about, it's like this confusion. It's like, yeah, it's racist, and yes, there is elements of that based on the definition. But when it's an individual, that's prejudice. That's discriminating that person. They may be racist or
Mm-hmm.
supremacist. When you look at the word supremacist, we got the facts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So an
Right.
advocate, sorry, go
Oh no, I was just going to say on that
on.
same point with just that definition, racism and races. That's I love you went to Dr. Claude Anderson, and that's why I put in the comments too, because his approach to that is really awesome.
Hmm.
Because that racism is that superiority, right? Prejudice is in the definition, but
Yeah,
with racism is attached a power. And
yes.
so that's why it's one of those understands where racism is a system, right?
Hmm.
So where I think it can be individual is if, and I've explained this before, and people, maybe have disagreed with it, but I say, okay, look, if I'm walking, jogging in my neighborhood,
Hmm.
and um, you know, a white man passes by in a pickup truck, with Confederate flags, and he yells out, "You N word" or this or that, keeps going. I didn't experience racism, in my opinion. I may have
Mm.
experienced an action from a racist person, but I didn't experience racism because you didn't affect me spiritually, mentally, socially, physically, and financially in a place that I can't recover. Like now,
Mm.
if that same white man driving that truck hurled that insult at me, that racist insult or prejudice insult at me, if he was the owner of this job that I'm going to for an interview, and he doesn't hire me, now I've experienced racism. If he is the tenant, the landlord of the apartment I live in, and he kicks me out because he doesn't
Hmm.
like the color of my skin, now I experience racism. If he's
Hmm.
on the zoning board downtown and you're legislator and legislation locally, and he red
Hmm.
lines or he says that this area, this is high populated with black people, we're going to remove resources and economic opportunity from there. Now I experience racism. So I love the approach of
Yes,
Dr. Claude Anderson with everything that he does. It's putting the power to that. And
exactly.
he also says in a lot of his videos and his lectures, like, it's a race, but how can a black person be racist? What you gonna win with?
That's what
What's
I
the
mean.
power?
It's like,
What's the economic impact? You're at a disadvantage. It's a race. How?
hmm,
You have uh, you're at a disadvantage because your opponent has been given a head start, a huge head start. So
400 year head start. Yep.
one thing, Brandon Sanders, my
Hmm.
bro, who I do bro studies with, he said, "What about the Moors in Spain from 700 to 1492?" So yeah,
Or,
there's a gap in that, and that right there, even
hmm,
that question is an easy way to perpetuate or stay under that system of white supremacy. That a lot of stuff that doesn't fall under his story,
hmm,
HIS, their story is wiped away because it's not,
exactly.
you know, it's not it's not glorified for them. It doesn't
No.
add any value to the system that currently exists. And
Hmm.
so
And
in
just
that
to
we were talking
interject,
about,
Mike.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, just what Brandon says, and again, even with the Moors, something that Ivan Van Sertima, you can look at his book, The Golden Age of the Moors, like that. When you start breaking down the history, and you see where they were at in the timeline, right? This was they was on a long, long campaign also, and then once Spain obviously just kind of just took over what they was doing, the Moors had to go back, to North Africa, right? But again, you could go into town on all of the intricate details, but we just don't have the time. That's why I'm just trying to give out some bullet points. But 100% Brandon agree. The Moors is a very big part of before all of this happened, before the conditioning, before the wiping of history, before the books were destroyed, etc. But sorry, you was gonna say, Mike, just want
Yeah,
to
no, and I
interject.
was just talking about, just furthering that the detail on the difference between racism and prejudice.
Mm,
I think for the biggest thing or to differentiate that is if you don't have that power, that's the difference. you know,
yeah, it's
if you're black or again these titles, and by the way, Limahl and I agree where these titles are overrated, right? I'm
mm,
not black. He's not black when I put my hand up to the screen. you know, but we have these colors. So if you're black, brown, or a person of color and you're at a disadvantage, then you can have a prejudice, you can have a hatred, or you can have a bias in your mind. But are you really racist? And the answer to, and I acknowledge that a lot of people's answer to that would be, yeah, you are racist. You can be racist, black. Okay, cool. It's just my opinion. So I think that's the
But
biggest difference.
yeah, but it's important to say, like you said before, it comes from the economic power, right? This is the thing that I think a lot of our people sometimes miss. And I personally, I learned the hard way, and I talk about that in the book, where it's a transition of being awakened to certain information, right? And it's the economic power which is the determining factor, right? So, like what Claude Anderson said, Dr. Claude Anderson, sorry, he says, how a black person can never be a racist because they've never had enough economical power control to actually manipulate any other group. Like that has never been the case. And when you don't really include the topic of um, the economy or economics, right? You're not really going to hit all of the factors of, the systematic racist systems that have been put in place, because that is a big part of it. Again, as we said, over those years from, say, the 1500s, where Europeans were going to acquire resources, they were the ones getting the gold, the silver, the cotton, all of these different commodities. But who were the people that was getting it for them? It
Right.
wasn't them. They wasn't in the mines digging out the gold and silver and placing that, taking that out of Central and South America, right? Or even North America. They weren't doing that. That wasn't them. So who was doing it? So they've had an economic head start in the race, right? If you've got like tons and tons of gold, and when you go look into it, it's probably a book I could remember, The New Case for Gold by James Rickard. You read that book and you see all the different countries globally who have been collecting gold for the last like 5, 6 years. Countries like Russia, China, just stockpiling gold because they know how valuable that is. But black people never had that kind of head start. So how can they be a racist if we're talking about being in competition? How are you
Right.
gonna pull yourself up by the bootstraps if you don't have any boots?
Right,
Do
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
It's
That,
impossible.
and
People like,
that's
yeah,
another one of those. That's another one of those quotes, right? And that the reaction to that, pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
mm,
We were watching also, my wife and we watch a lot of documentaries. We were watching just
mm,
yesterday. I don't know if it's a Netflix series that we watch, and it slips my mind now, but it showed the in America at least it
mm,
showed the public assistance or the wealth or the government assistance financially from whites versus blacks.
yeah,
And here in America, we always hear that thing, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and
mm,
lazy, all this stuff, blah 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 blah. But the welfare, it's more
mm,
whites
mm,
by per capita is way more whites. It dwarfs per capita the amount of whites on welfare and public assistance and things like that than blacks. But you never
mm,
hear that side of it. And that's that thing of division and how they keep us divided because they control the narrative. Again, that
mhm,
power. I control the media outlets. I can put out to you what to think. I control the social media, all of that stuff. And that's another
yeah,
thing with Dr. Claude Anderson. It's that ownership, power and
mhm,
ownership. So again, back to that quote that we were talking about.
yeah,
It's so here it is, that thing of what's going on, the latest with George Floyd and that
mhm,
killing, and it's happening over again. This is something. This is one thing that I say a lot too. We're seeing what has been put out now from social media. I was just talking to one of my former clients who's white earlier today, and you hear this often. This country is falling apart. It's falling apart at the seams. And I say, wait a minute, it was never together. But now we're seeing the killings. People have cameras, they have phones,
mhm,
and you're seeing this stuff. So now that it's displayed, people think all of a sudden it's new. No, it's always been there, right? It's always been
yeah,
there. Um, Yeah, and my sis said food stamps too. Yeah, so any public assistance, they dwarf it. But yeah, so this silence, right, of the non-blacks seeing this stuff. And for
Mhm,
me, this is one of the things I told you I was even watching the video more this morning in preparation is
mhm,
a book by Dr. Robin DiAngelo. That's amazing. And that I
mhm,
suggest to anybody, black, white, brown, whatever, to read or even just the video
mhm,
on YouTube where she explains this is white fragility. White fragility. We can have a whole forum on that. And here's the
mhm.
thing: a lot of people may think, "Oh, well, she's saying the stuff that black people's been saying all along. Now somebody white, we glorify that." Yes, because they'll listen, and that's her thing,
Mm,
white fragility. So if even if we think about that fragility, the word we talk about definitions, right? What's the
mhm,
foundation? It's the quality of being easily broken or damaged, right?
mm.
So one thing that we see in social media now is the Karens,
Ah,
and
yes.
how the reaction from this whole Karen movement is, oh my God, I'm suffering because
Mm,
people are calling us Karens and this and that, and you don't know what that's done. And it's all of a sudden this fragility of, it's also been said of white tears, and all
mm.
this where it's instantly the public sees that and it's, oh my God, this is something that we have to do something about this because
Yeah,
this is ugly. This is horrible. It's an attack on people. It's like, huh, I wonder, how does that feel?
exactly. And it's good that you brought that out because again, these things I was saying, I spoke to my cousin in New York earlier today, and we were just having a brief chat, and I was saying, even at my age now, I'm starting to see certain things repeat in the world, or certain instances just happening. I'm like, oh, okay, it's that time again. All right, I understand now. And even with that whole thing, this Karen culture, I tie it back into some history for the people, right? So with Black Wall Street, 1920s, the reason, as they say, why those riots started was because a black guy stumbled into an elevator and touched a woman or bumped into a white woman who was the elevator operator. Then that was an uproar. They put in the newspapers, nabbed the Negro for assaulting and raping a white lady.
Mm-hmm.
So you tell me what is the difference between that woman making that story up then in the 1920s to Karen person calling the cops or the police on a black individual in 2020. Like it's the exact same thing, and this is where you start to see the things repeating. And I think it's important to look at these scenarios like objectively and really just analyze and break them down for what's actually happening in front of you, not getting emotional, but just logically and pragmatically thinking, okay, how is all of this happening? Why is it happening all the time? Like the questions that we have, why is it?
Right.
And when you start to really dig a bit deeper, and you correlate what happened before to what's happening now, you start to really get some real in-depth answers as to why things are the way they are.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, man, because I encourage everybody. I put in the Facebook comment is the book White Fragility by Dr. Robin DiAngelo. But also look at on YouTube, the video itself, man. I was just watching, I was like, wow, it's amazing. Because again, we know that the message is going to be received by whites from a white person quicker than a black, because it always feels like an attack, right? And here's one thing that she said too in that video that stood out to me,
Mhm,
and it's what happens to all of us, right? Even if you and I were to just have a religious conversation, right? It's the same
mhm,
thing that will happen if we're challenged. So she said, it's what happens to us when we're challenged on something. We shut down, or as she calls it, glaze over. And then in
mhm,
respect to white fragility or that white silence, it's about protecting your position and holding your worldview in place. So now if I confront this, I have to admit that, oh my God, there's something there. And this is something that I gotta face and I must admit. So it's uncomfortable. But here's the
yeah.
thing. I think this is the plight of, if it's going to be united, we stand and come together, right? And this is
Mhm,
the real solution. And what many of the figures in the 60s and the 50s and 60s, or the 60s, what they did and, were executed or murdered themselves. They wanted to let people see, especially white people, that divide. Poor whites,
Hmm.
they pitted them against blacks, and they were in worse off situations. And
Yeah.
so that right there, when you're challenged with something, and here's what she says also in the video, in the book: white fragility is killing people of color, and it's very serious. So what happened
Hmm.
I guess a day before or in the last week as well, was the situation with the Karen in the park calling the cops on a black guy for actually telling her to leash her dog. Leash laws, telling her to abide by the law, and not realizing that that could have been a situation where it could have been another George Floyd, right? And
Yeah.
it's one of these things over and over again. Documentaries, books, it's things out here. If we're not always looking for entertainment and we look for these
Hmm.
resources, we can find it over and over again. It's times where it's shown, like you said, even going back to Black Wall Street, and it's a continuation of these things when white fragility is acted upon, or oh my god,
Mm.
you're attacking me. And it's not that. It's like, okay, if you want to come to, let's put these things out here and let's talk about it. So that's what I think is amazing about just that book and the video as well. And for a lot of people, you may be like I used to be. I would do all my research from YouTube. I would look up the YouTube lecture on a book because I
Mm.
didn't like to read. Um, and that's been in the last maybe 5 years that I actually enjoy reading now. But so check that
Mm.
out. But it's a lot of things that I'll come back to with that. And one of the other things too, a part of that is um she talks about the importance of gaining racial literacy.
Mm.
And so we talk about financial literacy, we talk about all these
Yeah.
things, and just literacy in general and education, but racial literacy, meaning looking at that history, and how racism is a system, not an event. It
That's
is a
that's the
system
thing.
that is fueled by white supremacy, and that's the point.
Exactly. And just to interject on that, glad you brought that up because again, for clarity, the the word supremacist, and it's very interesting. This example now it says an advocate of the supremacy of a particular group,
Mm,
especially one determined by race or sex, and then in quote as the example, a white supremacist.
right, right.
Right, so it,
Yep.
it doesn't say a Asian supremacist,
Hmm.
doesn't say a black supremacist, it says a white supremacist. That is the example that they're given. So that has and bears some weight because most of the time that is the people that are actually manipulating other groups. And
Hmm.
again, I'm not here to really do a full history class. As I said, we
Right.
could be we could be both here covering from literally going to school.
Yeah, exactly.
But the fact of the matter is that there's certain words that link to what's actually happening. And if you don't understand those things, it's very difficult to really break it down. And, even when some of the reasons that I jotted down here, why does it keep happening? Okay,
Hmm.
well, it's a competition for resources. Certain groups are trying to compete. One of the rhetorics in the black community is always, oh, the Asian man is always doing this, or the white man is always doing this. And I'm like, okay, but we're in 2020. My stance to that, with the business that I'm doing is, okay, but what are we doing?
Yeah.
What are they doing? That's okay for them, right? But in terms of what are we doing, that's what you got to focus on. So when people are like, stoning police and they're rioting and they're busting up small businesses and stuff, yes, I know these are probably not black communities. Big difference again between community and neighborhood. Neighborhood is just where somebody lives. The community is where you actually have a stake. You've got the businesses, you've got some kind of ownership, like
Right.
you said earlier,
Right.
right? So you're not going to mess up your own shop. That would be
Hmm.
silly.
Right.
Inappropriate behavior, as Dr. Claude Anderson would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sayings.
Hmm.
But when we talked about the mercantilism, then slavery, then there was the emancipation, then there was Jim Crow, then it was integration and civil rights. There was all of these. These were events, but during all of those events, look at the things that was happening. There was things people was getting hung on the street, and
Right.
people gathered around and watched. Like So going back, tying it into that whole silence thing, like you can't silence that. There's pictures, you can see it. That's not I. People that look like me weren't doing that,
Right.
and I feel like it's this, you
And that
know.
that I'm sorry, bro. That's a point
I'm sorry.
too. That's a quote, right? From Robert DiAngelo. She said, "We often talk about or learn about this group or that group, their struggles and their triumphs,
Hmm.
but we fail to ask their struggles and triumphs in relation to whom." And so it's
Exactly.
like that, that thing of it keeps happening. Why? It's always something to counteract any progress. Look at it, and now Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Black Wall Street. That's not the only example. That's the
No.
biggest, right? That's the biggest
Hmm.
atrocity. But there's a whole section on just anti-blackness, and in that chapter, it's state-sanctioned discrimination against African Americans, right? So here
Hmm.
we are. This is just a few of them. It's not even an exhaustive list, but just a few of them.
Yeah.
Kidnapping and 300 years of enslavement, torture, rape, brutality, medical experimentation, the black codes,
Mm.
sharecropping, bans on testifying against whites. You and I, we discussed like before this with Dr. Claude Anderson, meritorious manumission.
Hmm.
Look that up, people. If you've never heard of that, look it up.
1710.
It's heavy.
Hmm.
Um, Mandatory segregation, bans on black jury service and voting, lynchings and mob violence, like you talked about in the streets. We were watching a documentary today and it talked about just how they erased some of that culture, where it was postcards, legislators, people in powerful places in these postcards smiling like, yep,
Hmm.
this is nice. And it's a black body hanging behind them.
Yeah.
Building interstates off by exits or business places of exits where black people were hung,
Hmm.
imprisoning people for unpaid work, bans on interracial marriage, redlining to profit realtors and bankers still
Mm.
goes on today.
Yeah.
Employment discrimination, educational discrimination, bias laws and policing practices, white flight, huge white flight, subprime mortgages, mass incarceration, school to prison pipeline, disproportionate special ed referrals and punishments,
Mm.
testing, tracking, school funding, biased media representation, historical omissions, etc., etc. That list goes on, and that's that
Hmm.
continuation. Like you said, it keeps happening. This is stuff that's still going on today, so it's not anything that stopped or it's all of a sudden okay, it's going to get better. It keeps happening.
Exactly. And a key thing to really just add on to that is
Bro, real quick, Nikki Dimples,
Nikki
he posted in
Dimples.
there to post the title of the book YouTube video that Mike mentioned.
Yeah.
It's White Fragility. Can I
Hmm.
comment on it? I think I can. I'm gonna mess up the
Yeah.
video a little bit, but
Yeah. Maybe
White
we'll give a
Fragility.
link to a few books afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely on the post too on Facebook and on the share. We'll
Hmm.
because we're gonna leave this up. So
Yeah,
we'll put some links and some good stuff, some books and stuff like that.
definitely. And for the people that's on Instagram, it's going to be cutting out, so I will restart it because we haven't even got to certain points. And if you guys
Right.
are joining, hit the heart button. Appreciate you guys tuning in because this is just something that really has to be discussed
Yeah,
openly.
definitely.
And the point that I was going to get onto then. Did you finish your point? Sorry, Mike.
No, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Um,
And I wanted to say that too. I'm glad you said that. So for everybody on Instagram, when we get to the hour, of course, we'll be cut off, and Lamar's going to start it back up. I'll jump back in. So we're going to continue
yeah,
the conversation. So go ahead, bro.
definitely. Yeah, I was just going to say, off the back of what you said, the it's one of the issues, when you're talking about this fragility and the whole thing of the non-silence, which is what the whole topic sparked from. It comes down to who knows enough about enough, right?
Mm,
And when I say that, what I mean is the following: like, okay, so you have people in the black group that don't know who the Moors are, they don't know what happened in the year 1500, they don't know what happened in 1960, let alone 1510 or 1710. Same
325
with
AD.
exactly, but then it's the same with people in the white group or other ethnic or other groups. Okay, they don't know what happened in those times. So
Mm,
when this topic of racism and the S word slavery comes up, people's like, oh, they feel uncomfortable. They're not confident to speak about it because they don't understand. Warren Buffett says, confidence comes from knowing what you're doing, right? If you know what you're doing, then you're going to be confident in that.
right.
But if you don't know, then you don't know. So when you got a mixture of different groups that don't know all the history, they don't know what's right, what's wrong, who's lying, who's not lying, you know,
Right.
was there slavery? Was there not slavery? Do you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
It's like, oh, there's no such thing as racism. You know, there's all of these different thoughts and philosophies that get thrown around, but no one actually knows the core facts. And like you said, you know, the meritorious manumission 1710, man, there's so many different systems and things that was just thrown in there to really implement this type of system. Again, what I was gonna say before is I just remember the situation with lynching, right? Let's take that for an example, and then fast forward to 2 days ago, you know, with George Floyd. That wasn't that long of a time between when people was getting hung on the street in America to George Floyd yesterday. In the big scheme of things, 1500 to 2020, yes, that's quite a few
Right.
years. But from when the guys were getting hung on the street and people was taking pictures for it and saying "nap the Negro" and calling people the Negro, and you
Mm-hmm.
know they're 3/5 of a human being, you know, all of these things, you know, oh yeah, we're gonna let you free now, but you know you don't have anything, so you already have no boots to pull up, right?
Right.
That period of time
And
isn't
if you
that
got
long
and
ago.
if you got boots, you darn sure ain't got no straps on them.
Exactly. You know, so you're dragging your feet, right? Imagine you got boots on with no lace, you're
Right.
dragging your feet all the time. So what people have to really understand and compute in their brain is that that time wasn't that long ago. So for that policeman who did that atrocity, right? He's possibly, it's a high percentage that he probably has people who enslaved people that look like you and I or look like George in his bloodline, right? So when you think about generations and certain traditions and philosophies that get passed down, it's very possible that, you know, over the past 3 generations, people have just passed down how people were doing things when it was even worse, right? When there was no iPhone,
Right.
there was no Wi-Fi, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
They just had photos. It was like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
let's all gather together and take a photo of this. This is a great thing, you know? So those philosophies have been passed down, but it hasn't been that long of a period of time to really,
And let me
you
keep
know what I
going,
mean?
but I want you to keep going on that thought. But let me, this is something just popped in my head, because I'm
Mm,
always thinking, right? Isn't it interesting how we go back 30, 40, 50 years, not long,
not
across
long
the
at all.
world, not let's just say America, but isn't it interesting how the tables have turned? Because
Hmm.
now, right now, and I get it. I understand the thoughts of people who say, don't share that video, don't share that photo, think about the family and all this. And then on one thought, you think, well, guess what? That's how a lot of things are done. That's how it gets out to
Hmm.
the public eye. If you think about things
Exactly.
that happen in the South and with civil rights and all this stuff, it was when things were put on a national scale that it gets attention, and now something's going to be done about it. So I
Hmm.
do feel like there is a cutoff point to where, okay, now it's getting old and you're perpetuating the trauma. However,
Mm,
think about this. Let's go back to when all these were happening all the time, and it still is. But
hmm.
there was once a time when they celebrated it. They put it out. Like I say, there were postcards. There were
Hmm.
postcards of gator bait where I would email from my family to the north a postcard with an alligator with a black baby in its mouth, or black, and look at its out, different things. Lynchings with kids in the
Hmm.
photos. You can see right now photos, videos of Klan rallies in America
Hmm.
with little kids there, women. That's
Yeah.
another big separation that a lot of times white women can exclude themselves from things that has happened. And it's like,
Hmm.
this just happened. Now that it's flipped, though, that we're putting that stuff out there, it's a problem.
Yeah. Exactly. Time out. Sorry, hold that thought. Instagram's gonna cut out, guys. So I'm gonna restart it.
Awesome.
So I'll save this one as well. So see you in a sec.
Awesome. And for everybody on Facebook, we're just giving Limahl time to restart Instagram, and we're going to continue this. By the way, anybody watching on Facebook, feel free to put in your comments in there, feedback. I'm going to share this. Thank you also to everybody who shared this on Facebook already. People who are
Definitely. Thank
commenting.
you.
Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to share it when we end this. So, and we'll continue, we'll continue this conversation. So thank you so much for all your feedback and your time, man. And again, this is just, I'm thankful for social media because we can have opportunities to discuss these things. And let's
Hmm.
think about this. 20 years ago, what would have been the struggle for me here in the US and you there to have one of these conversations or to talk about some things?
We would have had to send a lot of letters, let's say
Right.
that.
All kinds of like pigeons and
I
and
know.
and no email. So
Nope,
would have been a lot of things we had to do.
exactly. And yeah, I'm just gonna bring you in now. Yeah, it's let's wait for that to come in. Yeah, like I said, Mike, just the time frame, the timeline, should I say, it's not that long of a period of time. So when we really think about it and break it down, it's like 150 years, one of the things here I've got. So between 1500 and 1650, right, around 5 million blacks were moved to Central America, Costa Rica, etc. That was just between 1500 and 1650. In 150 years, they dug out 15,000 tons of silver and 15 talons of gold, right?
Wow.
Now, I have qualifications in precious stones, accredited jewelry professional, right? And when you start to analyze the commodities market, when you analyze like the journey of a diamond, for example, once it's dug out and the value, when certain stones are, discovered, the value in that industry is intense. And obviously, gold is, one of the main commodities that people, it used to be the gold standard for the US,
Right.
right? Like that's how powerful it was until it got removed. But those type of resources is what we're talking about here, where 15,000 tons of silver and gold. This was in that period of time. So when people compare, it's like, oh yeah, but you can't look at racism, but you have to. You have to look at how people are enslaved because, as we said, in a competition, someone's got 15,000 tons of silver and gold. That's
Right.
quite a big head start.
Right.
I can't compute the value of what that would be today, but that's quite a lot, right? It's
Yeah.
quite a lot. Over 300 years, 30 to 35 million blacks were shipped across the seas. Two-thirds of them died, which we know, and just that kind of genocide, that kind of like just destruction on the people, it's just one of those things you cannot be silent on. And that's really just my take on it. I'm like, look, how many more times does it take to really just have this conversation? And if
Right.
if you feel uncomfortable about it, where I personally don't, I talk about these things because it's history. I got to be uncomfortable. It's already happened,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But it's just information. It's just what happened. As I
Right.
said, people like me or people that look like you and me, they weren't the people that was hanging people in the street. They
Yeah.
weren't the people that shackled other people in cages and put things in their mouths and all the horrible things that
Yep.
they probably could have got what they wanted without doing that. They did that because they could,
Right. So a
right?
couple of points on that very thing, bro, is the fact that we somehow make racism or race slavery, the things that goes on in other communities outside of white communities or white people, their
Mm,
story, right? That's
yeah.
American history.
Hmm.
It is European history. It's history, the world history, but it's always
Hmm.
that, Black History Month or, well, let's not talk
Yeah.
about this. And so that's one of the things that I put in my notes too, is how do we cope with the moral trauma of white racism? Two ways.
Mm,
Historically, and this is from Robin DiAngelo as well, White
mhm,
Fragility. Historically, they've projected their sins onto the Black body. And now she
mm,
breaks this down. Here's what she means by that: the titles: lazy, shiftless, criminal.
mm.
You go in and destroy an entire company for your economic gain, that's criminal.
Yeah.
When you can relax in your big house,
Mm,
right, and reap the benefits of work by bodies, black bodies dying, rape, torture,
Human
all this stuff.
capital.
You can
Mm-hmm.
set up systems, you can set up stock markets and trade worldwide and get such an extreme head start that we have to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
That's lazy. That's
Yeah.
shiftless, and it's one of those things where now that's what she says. We project our sins onto black bodies. The other thing
Mm.
is this: today, in addition to that projection, they obscure the system of racism that they uphold and exempt themselves from its forces. In other
Mm.
words, well, that happened a long time ago. That has nothing to do with me. Another
Yeah. So
documentary we was
pass the
watching.
book.
Yes, another documentary we was watching. There's a black man, and I think he's married to a white woman. And he said they were having this discussion, and she said, "Well, I had to work for what I have, and this and that, and I had my struggles." He said, "Here's the difference: you were given the opportunity to do that."
Mm.
You were given the
Yeah.
freedom and the space to do that. And you go back and look at generations before. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. My slave owner, great, 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 great grandfather did benefit from this. And this is what I gained from that. We got this land. We got this
Mm-hmm.
property. We got this business. And so it's a continuation of that. And it's more so how that race, right? Because we're
Mm.
talking about even a physical race to that finish line, how it
Yeah.
shapes the lives of white people. And it's one of those things we have these discussions. People seem to think it comes from a place of negativity or an attack. No, it's just
No.
discussion because we need to have these things.
And it's a key. Yeah. Again, just going off that, like we said in the post, an uncomfortable but necessary conversation,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's uncomfortable because, of course, it doesn't sound good. We're talking about people being shackled and, transported from their own land and, just thrown over the board of a ship, with no burial, no remorse, just like a piece of fish, worthless, right?
Right.
That is uncomfortable to hear. However, it's necessary to talk about it because people don't understand what actually happened, right? And one of the points we got down here is language. So
Mm.
the one thing that I don't like about this, I will say this, is the whole Karen culture. Is like I just don't like how something negative like that has to
We
be
got a
made like
comment, bro. Somebody,
go for it.
I can't see the name.
On the
Audio for
Instagram.
me, yeah, audio for
Okay,
me is real low.
okay.
Um,
Audio for Mike is real low. Can just hear them all at the moment.
let me know.
Just give us a thumbs up in the chat, Ashley, if you can hear Mike now. Just do a quick test because
I
it's
have my
important to hear
input.
both.
Test, test, test. Check. I have my input up on my microphone. So y'all just let me know. Want to make sure that I don't get an echo either
Hmm.
because we are running on multiple streams and platforms. So
Yeah,
a lot of times it gets a little bit
crazy.
choppy or echo may come in and out. Let me know. I don't even see who commented that now
Yeah, it was
on the
Ashley.
feed,
Ashley,
but
can you give us a thumbs up?
okay. Yeah,
Can
actually
hear
let me
Mike,
know.
but it's a little low.
Yeah, let me know how it is with my volume there.
It's
Okay,
a little
okay, yeah.
low.
Nikki said that as well. That you can hear me, but it's a little low,
Hmm.
a little quiet. Oh,
Maybe touch it
let
up
me
a
ask
bit,
that
Mike.
for everybody on the Instagram feed. Was it the same way before we restarted, or is it changed now? Let me know that. Now, of
Very
course,
low.
I haven't made any changes, but sometimes you never know. Let me check all my input um, on here.
And thanks for everyone tuning in. Couple
Yeah,
shout outs.
definitely.
Fingers
Thank you,
UK,
everybody.
Kiki Dimples, Sleepy99, TY Jeffers. Hey, Phyllis. Hey, how you doing? K Sean. Hello.
What about now?
DJ.
Okay, it was clear before. Yeah,
Can we restart?
Mr. Jeffers, let me know now because I just made one adjustment with my microphone in the stream. So let me know if that changed it. It said it was clear when we first came back. So
Yeah.
um, I'm not sure. Well, one thing we did too, we to run this to run this properly,
Hmm.
we had to do stuff with volumes in different devices so we don't get a lot of feedback. But they said it was clear
Yeah.
before.
Yeah,
Oh,
that sucks. Shall we try and restart it? See? And the guys
uh,
that know Nikki Dimples, we had some
yeah,
issues.
yeah, right. And let me say this too.
The
This
same.
is one thing that uh I think we may have talked about in the beginning, or just you and I before we actually went live, is that the quarantine has showed people across the board what it takes to do these things. Because people think you just hit a button and it's there, the audio and all this, all the versus battles that we've been seeing of celebrities going live, the pictures drop out, the sounds all over the place. So I'm like, okay, welcome to the world of people who do this on a regular
Mm,
basis. There
same
appears
little
to be
piece.
feedback. Hmm.
Let's try that. Let's try this. Let's restart the Instagram.
Okay.
See if that fixes it. So, guys, just jump back in. Appreciate that.
We'll be right back on Instagram.
Yeah, sucks because we had some points there
I
as well.
know
But
we going good. Look, I always say, oh man, we're getting into good stuff, so we we get interference.
yeah, no,
That's how it
it's true.
happens. But Facebook, thank you everybody who's still tuning in on Facebook. Um, just let me know if everything still sounds fine on this end with Facebook. If you're there, any questions, comments, thumbs up, anything, any kind of
Appreciate it.
reaction. Comment is better than a reaction because I see it right in the actual stream.
Yeah,
All right, I'm coming back to the
testing. So, guys
Instagram
on
feed.
Instagram, just let us know if you can hear Mike. Okay,
All right, I
Mike,
should
if you
be
could just
popping
give us
up
a couple.
in just a second.
All right. Hey, Rudy.
What's up, Rudy?
Convos
Well, wait, I
family.
said what's up, Rudy, before I was in there. What's up, Rudy? All right, people on Instagram, let me know how that sound. Rudy, let me know how's the sound with me now for everybody on Instagram. We just restarted that. And we wanna make this as good as possible with the audio because we're talking about some things that it's good
You need
conversation and
to
just
hear, yeah.
yeah, just that
Yes.
space and that platform for it. Thumbs up. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you,
Nice.
Facebook, for bearing with us. Thank you so much. We appreciate
Cool.
that. Shelly, what's up? What's up? Rudy, everybody. Rudy said happy birthday. So happy
Oh yeah,
belated
cool.
birthday to
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah. Um,
Appreciate that.
but yeah, so
All right, let's get back
all
to
right,
it.
where were we? So,
So
I
we're
think
talking about
go ahead.
Karens. We were saying about Karens. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, and we were just talking about that. And again, one of my whole for those of you just joining or anybody who are just coming in on Facebook or Instagram, we're on two different feeds. We're on Limahl's feed on Instagram Live, we're on my feed on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook Live. So wanted to have this conversation. Just a little since we started over, just a little background on this. We've been connected on social media. And I shared just a post that says, "Dear non-Black friends, I'm paying attention to your silence." And he instantly messaged me and we wanted to talk about this. And so a lot of my foundation of this conversation is from the book by Robin DiAngelo, White Fragility. And so we've been
Mm-hmm.
talking about a little bit of history and what that is doing, the whole movement and what we're seeing right now in our world. Because here's another thing, it's always easy for us to disconnect ourselves from someone else. So I can easily say, Black American, right? And you're over there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And this and that. And we find ways to separate. But let's think of this on a world scale as well as world progression to move forward and to
Mm-hmm.
get. So here's one thing to another thing in that note, and just talking about that white fragility and the Karens and the silence.
Mm-hmm.
Racial insulation, racial insulation plus superiority. Racial insulation plus superiority equals common white patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So here's some bullets on just that alone. And it's almost one of those things where you can, again, we're having conversations on this, and it's just a chip off of this massive foundation that we can go on and on for days, right? It could be a whole seminar as long as we wanted it to be. But here's some bullets on that. Racial insulation plus superiority equals common white patterns. Preference for racial segregation with no sense of loss. So it's one of those things, we hear those quotes a lot from extreme races, go back to Africa,
Mm-hmm.
well, if you don't like it, leave. Lack of understanding about what racism is, which is what we open with and talking about what racism is. What does that look like? What does it mean?
Yeah.
What is the cause and effects? seeing themselves as individuals outside of racial socialization. So it's that thing where easily I can take because I don't think like that. That's not me. So I can remove myself from the cause and effects from what's going on.
Yeah.
Not understanding that they bring their history with them. History matters. It's that thing is
Yes.
no, it's not forget about it. It's not leave that. It's in the past. History matters because it shapes your
Study it.
present and future,
Mm-hmm.
right? Assuming everyone is having or can have their experience. So it goes back to what we talked about a lot in just this feed already. Pick yourself up by the bootstraps. I did it, you
Yeah.
can do it. 2008, it's over. Racism is over. We got a black president.
Nope.
you know, Arrogance, lack of humility, unwillingness to listen. It's again that shutdown or glazing over. I don't want to talk about this. Too uncomfortable. Let's not talk about this because if I don't
Mm.
see it, the blinders, right? That the
Yeah.
blinders of a horse. If I don't see it or talk about it, it's not there. It can't exist. So
Mm.
right now, I can't see out my window because I'm blocking it. It's there. We know it
Yeah.
exists. Dismissing what they don't understand. That would be the same with anything. You dismiss a lot of what you don't understand. Cognitive
Mm.
dissonance, apathy towards racial injustice, apathy. I can't tell you the times, bro, where I shared about an incident that I had or a feeling that I had walking at night and seeing a police car or anything like that. And I share a story. And this is what happens a lot of times in comments from non-black friends.
Mm.
I hate that you had to go through that. Oh, I'm sorry you had to go through that. So it's that apathy. It's not empathy
Mm.
because you can't have the empathy because it would never happen to you
To
or you
you,
haven't
exactly.
experienced that. Your son, your
Mm-hmm.
nephew, your sister, your
Yeah.
daughter, your auntie, your uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, inability to or lack of interest in sustaining relationships with people of color, black, brown people, yellow people, right? We're talking about colors.
Yeah.
So
Which I want to go
it's
into.
that thing where it's I got a black friend, you know, and a lot
Mm.
of times you find out that black friend is the gardener, or that brown friend is a person that goes to church with them, or
Yeah.
they've been to my house? Yeah, have you been to their house? Have you talked to them about that uncle, that brother that was shot or murdered? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And let me see if it's any other because I want you to jump in.
Sure.
This is a good one. Wanting to jump over the hard personal work and get to the solution. We talked about it earlier, right? People,
Yeah.
and this is people of all races and colors. It's always that thing where you're having these discussions and it's deep. Everybody always wants to say, "What's the solution? What's the solution?"
Mm.
Have instead of unpacking all these layers and what I talked about earlier, that recipe, preparing that prep for this awesome meal or this cake that you're about to bake, is like, no, what's the product? I want the product right now.
Yeah.
Um, Needing to maintain white solidarity, right? That's
Mm.
one of the things that I see, and it's like, okay, man, that's how we should move. It's white solidarity. It's very hard for them to speak out on some of these things because it's that solidarity in the silence. Like, oh,
Mm.
I don't know what my people are going to think about me, and that's one thing I tell people in answer to okay, one of the solutions. Well, what do we do
Mm.
about it? This conversation you're having with your black friend, your black trainer, your black neighbor, how often do you have it with your white mother, your
Yeah.
white cousin, your white lunch buddies that you're going out
Mm.
to eat with? And then two more. Highest priority is saving face or looking good.
Yeah.
Again, we're
It's
talking
a
about
good
the
one.
the common white patterns of racial insulation plus superiority. Defensiveness about any connection to racism. That
Mm.
easy to get offended. Like, oh no, yeah, blah, 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 blah.
We shouldn't talk
And
about it.
yes. And then the last one, a focus on intentions over impact. One section that she talked about in the video of white fragility of this book that I'm talking about in her video on YouTube, she talked about how a lot of times it's more so sometimes a white progressive.
Mm.
And it makes me think of that last bullet, the focus on the intentions over impact. It's almost sometimes like that desire to show you that I'm on your side more so than the impact of what you can do or the
Mm.
impact you're having. Like, I just want you to acknowledge that I am an ally or that I'm that white friend. I'm on your side more so than what am I doing to impact this on a bigger level. My
Yeah.
politicians, the leaders saying, hey, this can't happen. Am I making those calls that the, black people have to make when they're killed and murdered, by cops? And one last point I'll make to that kind of puts that too, even with, because we're talking about, the base of this is George Floyd, right? That happened, and the Karen movement, calling the cops, every time, they're barbecuing, call the cops. They're bird watching, call the cops. They're congregating, call the cops. On the side of a lot of police cars, right? The sheriffs, police, deputies, all of this, we see a quote on most of them, right, around the world: serve and protect. And I say a question becomes in the back of my mind: what are you serving? Or to protect and serve, what are you protecting and what are you serving? What are you protecting and what are you serving? It's the same thing that comes to my mind when I hear conservative. What are you conserving? I think Dr. Claude Anderson hits on that, right? What 100%. Are you conserving?
It's true.
Some thoughts that I had on that. We were talking about that the titles and everything. I want you to get back to that. We were talking about the colors.
Yeah, definitely. And again, a lot of points then just on that last one where you're saying who you're protecting, who you're serving. That's why you could throw in who you're protecting.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, with the George Floyd situation, excuse me, with the George Floyd situation, he clearly wasn't being protected in that scenario. Right? It's very evident there was 3-4 of them that wasn't protecting him, so they wasn't serving his best interests. But what I was saying is with about this whole, Karen culture, which is relatively new, I guess, where I think it's more white females just start calling the cops or police on black individuals. And the thing what I don't like about it is that it gets overinflated in a way where it becomes like a thing now, right? And yesterday, I think I showed you that other video where there was a guy in the gym and he was saying the same thing, right. And he's like, the guys, the guys are in the gym that they rent an office space in a WeWork, I think, location, and the guy is asking him, "Oh, should you be here?" He's not, or he's not part of the staff, right? He's not a security guy. He's not a policeman. He's none of those things. He's just someone using the gym as well. So why is it that he is asking these guys, do they belong here? That was what he said.
Yeah.
And they're like,
and then in details, well, where do you, it's like, no.
Yeah, that's out of order. And it's like, I think when those titles get, blown up and it becomes like a cultural thing, like, oh, Karen's, like, no, that's just someone who's being prejudiced to that individual, right? Like we said earlier, she could be part of, a racist system or a racist mentality behind it. But in that individual circumstance, she was being prejudiced to the guy, just like he was being prejudiced. But then you could flip it because he was talking to a group of black guys. So now he's addressing a group. Now you can say, okay, yeah, he's probably a racist then because he's got the prejudice, the discrimination, and he's addressing a group. So he's addressing the group. He's not just saying to one person. But I think we have to kind of just really just dim the lights on those particular, terms like Karens and whatever. They're probably going to be something with this guy now, like, I don't know what name, I'm not John's, or I don't know, Daniel, whatever name they come up with. And I'm sorry if anyone is John. I got a homie called John. So not saying that, but do you know what I mean? It's like, it's one of those things where those things get blown up and then it becomes like a thing. But what I was saying in the points is that, we need to drop these points where it's like people of color, like, really and truly, what is a person of color? Like, I don't like, I'll be honest with you, I don't like the term minority. It has a negative connotation to it.
Exactly.
I don't like people of color. It's like, it sounds like some character out of a Disney film or something. Or the people of color, they went on an adventure. It's like, what is that? Just say a black person.
Yeah,
or a white person.
And let me just say this too. I love that you're saying that too. And I think that's the thing with people who have went on some journey, right, of awareness and have awakened to some things. You start to really dislike all the titles and the grouping, right? Because if you think people of color, we all have a color.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean?
It's like, why am I?
Well, you can group that stuff, and I think it's for people to understand, we still use these because it's the system that we currently operate in, and it's for relativity. But I agree with you 100%, man. That whole thing, black, people of color, minorities. And here's one thing that I like that I first started hearing in recent years from XM Radio, Urban View, the Karen Hunter show. She refers to it as the global majority. Because if you think about it, if we want to be real, people of color are the global majority, and that's why certain systems exist. That's why that separation exists, that division to keep you divided, because you don't realize that power that you have. There's a picture that floats around on social media every now and again where it's white, a bunch of white men sitting around a long rectangular table. The table is on top of a lot of black people on their hands and knees.
Oh, wow.
And it says, here's the protection of that power. They don't realize if they stand up, the whole system cracks. And so that's that thing. It's the global majority. But yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that because it's so true, man. It's titles that don't make sense. But go ahead, man. You were
No,
talking about.
exactly. Yeah, 100%. And, like say in the UK, usually growing up, you're always filling out time and time, you have to fill out a form, whether it's for a job, and it's always tick your box. Which box do you belong to?
Right.
And it's like, oh, I'm an Afro-Caribbean or black other. And there's no like uniformity to every form. It's every different corporation.
What's up, sis?
Right.
Stephanie jumped in. She said, Lord,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, every other corporation has their own system. So they're gonna maybe put on their form black group or Afro Caribbean or black other or African black or mixed black or just black. Right? And it's like, well, growing up you're confused because you're like, well, one form is black Afro Caribbean, but I have Afro and I'm Caribbean, so why do I have to be Afro Caribbean? Why can't I just be Caribbean? Right? Why can't I just be African? Why can't I just be black? Why is it these groups that only get put on majority of the time black people?
Yeah.
And again, this is interesting because, like I said, with the ONS, when they break down their statistics, they use those groups to obviously provide data and information. And most of the time, what you've seen on the lives and some of the other webinars I've been doing, I always try and throw in some data stats to just let people know, like, hey, this is not
black,
just
black.
black,
Afro-Caribbean, black.
It's just crazy. But the thing is with these labels, it really just amplifies the problems because yes, there are groups, but people don't refer to them as what they're actually called. It's always like people of color, African Americans. As Dr. Claude Anderson says, where in Africa?
Yeah,
Africa is a continent. It's not a
I
country.
saw a video on TikTok where a guy said African Americans and Africa. Is this just two continents or two countries and you put it together? A continent and a country, you put it together. Well, where?
Exactly. It's like saying, oh, you're European white. Like, where in Europe? And then you're gonna say, oh well, I'm.
No, real quick too, to add to that too. It's something my brother Chris just put in there. Is the fact that we have this revisionist history, right, where we take power from things. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing does a great job of explaining that in all her videos and YouTube and her book, The ISIS Paper. And then she puts the actual spelling and everything. But that's one thing too, that somehow they can take a lot of things that has power and weight to it and somehow twist it and taint it to make us think that it's bad. So my bro Chrissy put black as the most powerful color on the spectrum. It's where all other colors come from. There should be no negative connotation behind that word. That's so true. And you think about it, everything comes from, it's not darkness comes from light. Light comes out of darkness. You close your eyes, you see darkness, right? So it's think about it. Like, okay, for instance, the shirt I have on, it has all these colors on it. What makes it pop is that black background.
Black behind it.
So it's so much power to that. ISIS. I don't know. Maybe y'all hear about it. What happened to ISIS? The group, the terrorist group. Different things. They paint a picture to us, takes our history or things that has power and regurgitate it back to us and make us divided and make us hated. Woke has a negative connotation. And I say, okay, well, forget that. I don't even call it that. I'll just call it aware. So many different things. One thing you hear in America, like, oh boy, here come one of them Hotep brothers. where Hotep
Yeah.
means peace, right? It's peace,
Mm,
knowledge, and understanding. So that's one of those things where those titles, man, your bullet point of that, dropping the titles, people of color, minority, African American, Afro Caribbean, Afro
mm,
Latina, all this stuff. Now, of course, relativity, we have to say them to make people
mm.
relate to us, but it's in that, I think it's more so in your mind and how you operate. That's where it's time to drop it. Like, that's outdated. It's stupid.
Totally. And again, when these titles get thrown around, again, it already has like, essentially it has racism built into them, right? Because if I'm saying, oh yeah, and minorities like you, if I say that in a sentence, that's implying that, I am superior, I am the majority, right?
Inferior. Yeah.
I'm yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're inferior because you're part of these minority groups,
Right.
with all the underlying health issues and stuff like that. But when people don't have the open dialogue and the conversation, it's like, okay, but why do they have these underlying issues? Because this came up on the BBC a few weeks back, and it just popped up out of nowhere. And I've been saying a lot of things which I don't share everything. Let's just say that.
Right.
But some of the things that I was saying, to people I had conversations with, I was like, but these underlying issues were already there. That's why they're an underlying issue. So it's not any type of virus that attacks somebody is going to compromise their body. Doesn't
Right.
matter if it's a flu, coronavirus, whatever type of virus. If you've got some kind of health issues, it's going to affect you more because you have the health issues. But
Right.
the whole question of debate was, oh, it's the like BAME, what's it called? Black and Asian minority ethnicity or something like that. I don't even pay it much credence because I'm like, it just sounds stupid.
Right.
BAME, right? Do you know what I mean? It's like, what's with these acronyms?
Right.
Just say
Exactly.
black people and Asian people. Just say it what it is, because that's how
Hmm.
they address each other. But they were trying to understand, oh yeah, coronavirus is wiping these groups out. But they already had the issues. Why? Maybe because of the food that's being eaten. Maybe because of the general conditioning of a time where they couldn't have certain food or they couldn't
Hmm.
get certain materials or certain ingredients, where they had to make things out of flour and basic stuff. So they've just passed that on to generation and generation where it becomes the culture,
Right.
right? So now we're seeing, a big shift, specifically in the black group, financial literacy. That's a big topic, veganism or vegetarianism, healthy, clean eating. It's only now that we're actually getting that solid information that's, of value to switch around these
Hmm.
underlying health issues. Like you said, you've been in the fitness world for years. So it's like you understand the importance of that, right?
Yeah.
But years ago, those things weren't drilled. It was go to school, get a job. It
Hmm.
wasn't it wasn't
Right.
get fit, get healthy,
Right.
switch to vegetarian. It wasn't those type of things. So those underlying issues have been built in for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And
Stephanie said food deserts in inner cities is a huge reason too. Definitely true.
100%.
I don't have access to vegetables and fresh fruit and stuff. I have the leftovers and all this bad stuff that's just given off. And one thing you're saying too, we talked about earlier, is the how short of a time span this was in history. The
Hmm.
documentary we were watching just yesterday, this guy, I think, is in his 50s, maybe 60s at most. He was talking about being raised with his grandmother when he was younger. Now, again,
Hmm.
this guy's no older than 60s for sure. And he's
Yeah.
a historian. And he was talking about some of the meals his grandmother would make. And it was like cornmeal and water, and you mix it up and cook it, and whatever comes out, that's what you would do. Or you would make whatever you had. You're making something out of nothing, right? Practically
Mm.
eating slop. And so that's one
Yeah.
of those things. That stuff is passed down, and it begins to be one of those things where people talk about generational curses and all this stuff. I don't buy into that, because it's like, no, you're
Mm.
doing the same thing that you saw
Your
your
grandparents
mother and
do.
your grandparents
Yeah.
doing all this stuff that is what killed him. And you go to the
Hmm.
funeral, right? And you oh, praise God and all this stuff, and
Mm.
at the repast, at the ceremony where everybody gets together, you're eating the same stuff that killed grandma, diabetes,
This is
amputated
the
her
thing.
leg, so it's that. But anyway, that's part of that
Yeah.
dismantling of the colors. But uh
Hmm.
back to that
Moving on.
topic, man. So I love your next bullet, man. You talked about you go into plans. Um
Yeah, because Sorry, go for it.
No, go ahead. Yeah, that's the next
Yeah.
thing we're talking about, plans or what. Now we're getting to that part where people want to rush to solutions. Again, this is just what our thinking, and we're discussing this and we're just talking about it. So
Mm-hmm.
feel free to feedback.
100%. And again, I think these type of conversations, as I said, it's necessary to have them, to really just speak openly, and like I said earlier, without emotion. And that is the message I would say to other groups who may, I don't know if they feel intimidated to black males talking about the topic of race and different
Right.
groups, but it's just conversation, right? It's just conversation, and it's
Right.
conversation that has to be had because of the atrocities what are going on. That's the whole reason. It's like everybody's in an uproar right now. Well, some people anyway, because they are just sick to the teeth of seeing black people being killed on camera.
Mhm.
And this is not a movie, right? What we witnessed in that video is not a film. It's not a clip from Netflix, right? That was a real situation 2 days ago, and now
Right.
people are posting, and it's weird because they're posting, content from George's page, and you've seen him when he was alive, but now what actually happened to him. It makes it
Mhm.
even more sad to even,
Yeah,
engage in that content.
it's a gravity and a trauma that carries
Yeah,
it's baggage, it's weight.
yeah, 100%. And with the plans, again, the people that I study it is people who have years and years and experience of tackling these kind of issues. And one of the things that I think gets thrown around a lot of the time is that, oh, it's social issues, because I think I posted a couple of weeks back about, I'm tired of the marches, and I know sometimes they are necessary. Totally understand that and salute to the people doing that.
Mhm.
But the marches, the t-shirts, the hashtags, the GoFundMe's, it's all of these things. But the main primary issues, as we said right at the beginning, is not social, it's economical issues.
Right.
It's economical challenges is the reason why we're not prepared for these type of situations, right? There is no um, things and systems in place where people have resources to really try and shelter from that kind of thing. And again, we could be on 5 hour chat just on integration, on economics, communities, because there's so many different things to unpack when it comes to the black group. And that's the reason why the black group is bottom or the underclass in the US, and the same in the UK. All the statistics, just to give some context for people, even my colleague and I on our one of our new ventures, we've been getting a lot of data recently, and we found 37% of black people in the UK own their own home. 45% of those of the black population here rent through social housing, so like government subsidized
Right.
housing. So more than the people that own their property, right? 18% rent privately. In comparison to, say, white British group, where 68% own their own home, 16 rent privately, and only 16 rent through social housing. So 16 in social housing for white group, 45% in the black group, which is primarily single mothers,
Mhm.
with multiple occupants. Out of those single mothers, we also found that 50% of the women we spoke to had less than £500 in savings. But this is the crazy thing. This is whether you have to put on, my friend, the colleague Dan said we have to put on a psychotherapist hat first before we get into entrepreneurship. Because out of those same group of women, 85% were teaching or speaking to their children about the importance of saving. So you're seeing the disparity there. 85% are talking about saving to their children, but 50% have less than £500, around $750 less in savings. So the challenges, and which link into the plans, you have to look at the economics, because without doing that, knowing the history, knowing where the money came from, as to where, say, the white group is, in a position of power, um, monetarily speaking, you have to understand and break down the economics, because our plans need to be economical. Like, there's many debates, people talk about civil rights, and free everyone, and everything's let's integrate, and we all should ride on the same buses and all that. But the same thing is what Claude Anderson speaks about. He says, well, what happened is when blacks actually had their own bus companies and was doing well, and actually was doing better than other white companies because they served both groups. Then integration happened, civil rights, and then no black people wanted to go on the black buses because they was primarily concerned with fitting in and being accepted by the white group. But then you have to think, okay, but why would they seek to fit in with a group that was just lynching and hanging them because they got bamboozled, right?
Mm-hmm.
They got
Yeah.
confused on what
Right.
they should be going for. It's like, yeah, yeah, these guys are complaining. Let's just give them some civil rights,
Yeah.
not economic rights, just civil. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
dismantle all of their businesses, their communities, schools, hospitals, cinemas, doctors, surgeries, law firms, you name it, they had it. That got dismantled. Everybody went to jobs. It was like, go get a job now.
Right.
We're in the 50s, 60s, go get a
Yeah.
job.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then, the plan then becomes and then gets passed to the next generation. Yeah, go to school, get a job. So then we're now here, in the future, trying to like unpack all of this stuff. Like, okay, well, why should I go get a job? But when I go to the job, I'm not getting the best job. Even if I got the qualifications, the skills, the experience, I'm still not getting the job.
Right.
Right? So what kind of a plan is that?
Yeah.
When you
And
see on go on, sir.
oh no, I was gonna add, it's just it's all that I was talking about at the beginning. It's so much baggage, so much to deal with and unpack. Where it's one of
Hmm.
those things where you can. It's important, I think, too, to have a interconnection with yourself and know your power, know what drives you, because it can get to the point where it's almost so much that you get tired and you do nothing, and that's not going to do anything either. But it's so
No,
many things you have to think about and deal with. And
fast.
before we get into your bullet point on that solution, because I want to jump right back to that, the plans, right?
Mm.
I will say this real quick that no, let's go plans, because when we get to analysis, I'll put that in.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, let's
Cool.
go ahead. Keep going where you are right now.
Yeah, so as I said, for everyone on Instagram, if you feel what we're talking about, hit that heart button. We really do appreciate you tuning in. Um, with the economic situation, right? I think going back to an earlier point, some groups feel comfortable operating and working with people that look like them. So when certain groups, whether it's Asian, Chinese, Indian, Pakistani, whatever, Arab possibly, they feel the need to move to the next place and plug into their community because they know that's the easiest way for them to build up and actually get some kind of like footing in that new location. Whereas, let's say in the black group historically, it's always been like fighting against one another. Again, we don't have the time to go into all the psychologies of that because there is a lot to unpack.
Right,
But
whole lot.
historically, it's always like, oh, I don't want to go to that black guy's shop or black woman's shop because their ice isn't as cold as the guy in the white shop,
That's
right?
it. Yeah.
Or or I don't want to go to him because if he's got the money, then he's gonna have more than me. So there's all of these psychological plays that are happening in the brain, but without actually aggregating, because it's not necessarily about segregation or integration. It's aggregating the resources that you have, which you can then compile and do things a lot faster, which is what other groups do. So there's no need to like feel uncomfortable about saying that because it's like, well, look, with the data, there isn't any foundations of communities. It's just neighborhoods. People are living there, doing crime there, sleeping there, and then they go out. So every time, the economic sorry of the community is going bankrupt, right? They're spending money with other cultures and other groups, and they're getting rich. And as you've seen, probably the same in some communities where you're at, other groups have just built up like businesses and
Oh yeah.
more businesses and
Yeah.
more
All the time.
businesses and more businesses. And that's because they're going off the income from their own group and the black group. So
Hmm.
blacks are going to other
It's
shops and they're not,
compounded. It's
yeah, it's
compounded.
compounded over time. So the plans really, and I stand by that with a lot of the people I agree with, is like it has to be economic plans. It has to be things that can actually build infrastructure. So even with like the general themes of the businesses that I have now, it is more focused on like aligning to a mission to help people that look like me. Because I've played sports, right, in the past. I'm generally competitive. So when it comes to like business, I've just translated that, even from being in the music business, competing to make the best music, whatever. Um, I've just translated that into what I'm doing now. But I don't like to be in a losing team.
Right.
I've been captains, I've been leaders of groups or whatever, but I don't want to be on a losing team. And if you look at the data, you look at the historical stats, before, I'm not talking about before, King Mali Musa, the Moors, and all of these, decades before 1500. I'm just talking about, let's say, the last 500 years. We have been on the losing side. And then
Mm-hmm.
on top of that, systems have been put in place, laws have been put in place that makes it very difficult to even come out of that, especially if you're not acting and working as a group. So the whole thing of, social integration, that's not going to solve the problem, because the issues for black people and the black group is economic issues. I just gave the stats there. 50% of women have less than £500 in savings, right? There was more stats like the amount of women that are using wealth building products. 35% of males don't use any wealth building products. 57% of females, black females, don't use any wealth building products. So that means that's why they don't have the savings. That's why they don't have the stock portfolio. That's why they don't own the rental properties or commercial apartment buildings. They don't have all of these vehicles because they're focused on putting food on the table for their dependents.
Right.
So that's economical problems or challenges. It's not social. And that's where people get confused. It's, oh yeah, we got to fix poverty. It's like, no, as again, the mastermind, Dr. Carl Anderson, says, leave poverty alone. You're always going to have poor people. Like, you've got to focus on building the economical benefits so they have ownership. They can bounce their money back and forth. Other businesses can get a little, sprinkle of that money, and then they'll put it back, right? It's
Yeah.
one person's spending is another person's income. And if you don't get that or understand it, it's going to be very difficult to actually get out of this situation
Right.
because you have no power.
Yeah, and so I like your bullet, your point when we talked about that. We was getting to solutions where you talk about the extreme diaspora migration plans,
Yeah.
an African migration plan and the cost involved. And here's the thing I
Hmm.
want to add to that before you explain into that too. I think before it's a physical thing, right? Because when you look at this on a physical scale, it becomes a task that almost sometimes seems insurmountable. Like,
Mm.
whoa, this is when, where, how, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But think about it like this: first in mentality.
Hmm.
So thinking about that, that migration back first in mentality, where you
Hmm.
put your energy, where you put your money, where you put your dollars, your
Hmm.
sense, sense, you know.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the things that is a focus. So now let's talk about that. Because I want to kind of close before we get cut off again on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so see if we can keep it to two
Cool.
hours. But
Definitely.
thinking about that. And so this is solutions for us, right? Because I want to
Mm.
still take it back to what sparked this whole conversation is, dear non-black friends, I'm paying attention to your silence. So
Mm.
to tie it back into that, but go ahead with that, breaking that down, what that looks like.
Definitely. And again, tying it into that comment, it's like the silence. These are the things we've been talking about today. These are the things personally I can no longer just like hold back on. Like, I feel like even if I'm speaking to people that look like me, just to bounce and get some transparency, get some ideas, some solutions,
Right.
even that is helpful because, again, if we haven't historically unpacked all of the baggage, like you said, it makes it difficult to really overcome these things. And that silence, it really does pain certain people because it's like, why are you not showing that? Why are you not like
Hmm.
even talking about it? Just
Right.
and I've been looking, and I'm always assessing my social media, by the way. So I
Right.
know who's following, I know who bought the book, I know who's popping up on lives, and I'll speak to them, and I know because I pay attention, right? I'm
Hmm.
focused on it. But when I'm seeing people just not, and I'm posting it, I'm posting like 6, 7, 8 times, and not one person or some haven't even asked, like, oh, what's all that about? You just seen someone get murdered and all of this stuff. That the guy who videoed it, man, if you look at the video, you can't tell me you can watch that video and not feel something where he's like, he's there, he witnessed them murder him, and he didn't even
Hmm.
see the guys behind the car. That's hard to stomach, right?
Right.
Like I said, it was my birthday, and I'm watching this. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. And then when I saw that comment, I was like, it was just like a trigger for me. Like, yeah, Mike, we gotta speak.
Yeah.
But with these plans, the economic aggregation, there's no shame or there's no problem in saying, hey, I'm just trying to like help my black people, trying
Exactly.
to I'm trying to help the women that
Yes.
have got the issues, single mothers. I'm trying to help them like come up. Like if I've got some information that can help someone, I'm going to give it to them, right? We can
Hmm.
do it in a structured way where it makes sense, fair, no robbery, fair exchange, right? So I'm passing information. It's capitalism at the end of the day, right? We have to understand that one person's spending is someone else's income. We've seen it in the pandemic. People don't go to restaurants. Restaurants don't have any money coming in. They have around a week to 2 weeks of cash flow on hand,
Right.
usually, right? We've seen that impact happen of nobody spending.
Hmm.
So the aggregation is not like a bad thing. All that is saying is that, look, we've got some issues that we have to address. No one else can really address them other than the people it's affecting, right? And I've seen certain videos where, you've got people from other groups that are saying, oh, yeah, and they're not from the black group, let's just say that. But they're then kind of giving instructions like, yeah, we should be doing this. And it's like, with all due respect, you should have been, if it was that important, you would have been doing content like that months and years ago.
Right.
You're only
Right.
reacting because you have some kind of feeling. And I pick up on the language, right? I've been a songwriter, so I know how words get put together
Hmm.
to make sense. And when people use certain language and patterns like this is not good, it's kind of like dictatory, like I'm telling you what isn't good. And because I'm saying it, and it affects me, you should listen to that and you should give me praise because I'm saying it and other
Right.
people are not. But
Exactly.
you can't really get any praise because it's like you're only doing it due to a reaction.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like I can't really take that seriously. But the point I'm saying with the aggregation is black people shouldn't feel a certain kind of way because they want to, help their own people. And if
And
you look,
let me put some weight to that statement right there in terms
hmm
of solution for us, right? What you just said is powerful. And Stephanie made a comment too on Facebook. She said we have got to realize that there's nothing wrong with helping our own. They do it
hmm
religiously, and that is the thing. Here's another part of that: the white supremacy and the system that is upheld, systematic racism and everything. It's making you think that when you do the same thing that the
it's
powers
wrong.
that be or those in power or superior, you're wrong,
Mm,
right? And so it goes back to that point I made about white fragility, where you're putting your sins onto black bodies. The same thing you do. There,
hmm
there's a little China in every major city in the
hmm
United States. There's a little Italy, Germantown, all this stuff. But the minute black people say, "Hey, I'm spending with my own," there's no problem when you go in a Mexican restaurant and you see all Mexican workers, and you see or you see all Mexican patrons, anything like that. Asian,
hmm
nail salon in of the Americas, and you see all Asian workers.
Yeah.
You see them go to their places, but when black people do it, there's an issue. So that's one of the things too, is taking out. I say a lot of times, and it's not my original thought, but I've heard
Mm,
speakers and teachers say it, that we all have a little bit of white supremacy on us, because that's the
mm,
system that we come up in, that we're cultivated and
yeah.
indoctrinated into. So we got to
It's
wipe off that thought that it's a bad thing. And here's the thing too, for that message again, that dear non-black friends, me supporting my own doesn't mean I don't support you. It
yeah.
doesn't mean me being pro-black doesn't mean I'm anti anything else. And
Mm-hmm.
that's that narrative. That's that narrative that happens, you know. Oh, you
100%.
pro-black? Oh, so you racist.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And and it's crazy because like even that phrase, I said it. I think I was saying to my mom, I was like, I don't have to be a pro black. It's like I'm just black. I don't have to be a pro it.
Right. Simple.
Right. It's just that's just what it is, just like you are a white person or you are a Chinese person. And it's the dancing around of the names, it's the names that have the negative connotation where if you say I'm a black man and I have a business, people will be like, why are you saying you're a black man though? Well, I'm just stating a fact.
Right.
I'm just stating a simple fact. So it's dancing around those phrases that that's where the issues come in because
And
people feel uncomfortable.
another thought that you gave me, even when you said that, is that putting that power into titles, right?
Mm,
We call it a black business or minority owned business. If it's white, it's just a business.
but it's just a
You
business.
know, if you see something in the news that happens, it's a man. You can almost hear the headlines or read in the newspaper or watch the news, and you already can almost assume a color to something, right? Because if we're
Hmm.
watching the news right now, we hear a man gets harassed by the police. I'm going to assume that's a white man because there's no
Yeah,
title. If we hear it's almost never said a man when it's a black man or a black woman. It's that title has to be put on it, right?
first.
It's a
Yeah.
black business. So, like you said, dismantling some of those connections to those titles, it helps
Mm,
because no, I'm supporting business. I'm black
exactly.
and I'm just supporting
Hmm.
business.
That's
So,
it. And
yeah.
I challenge anybody. I just say, look, just look at the data. Don't take my word for it. Go do your research. I do the research and check out the numbers. So I'm seeing what government institutes are putting out there. So it's not me. That's not my research. That's what
Hmm.
the government institutes are putting out. So check it out. But with the plans, it's like it has to be based on, like I said, economical ones. It just has to be. There's levels. It's like, to get you gotta have the community, then you get the trust, and then you get the cooperation. But the community comes from the economics, the shops, the businesses, people spending with one another and building up that trust. And not shooting other businesses down because a small business is what it says, a small
Yeah.
business. So you have to understand if they don't have all of the products, just say to them, just say, hey, look, which is what I said last week. There's a shop that is in my community, and I said, "Hey, I want to spend my money on food in your shop because I
Hmm.
know people say, oh, I don't go because you don't have this and that. So I'm just going to give you some honest feedback. I'm not going to shoot you down. I'm just going to say, hey, if you could get this, I will come back and buy it. Simple as that. You don't have to be aggressive. You don't have to, like I said, shoot them down. Just communicate. Just learn to actually communicate your thoughts in a respectful way to one another
Yes. So
and
true.
have some standards, have some
So
a
true.
code of conduct, some
Yeah.
standards in place where it's like, okay, we're gonna have a feedback system. Because you have to realize as well, some of these businesses, like we said with the baggage, some may be working with families and they don't know
Hmm.
everything about business. They haven't
Right.
been to business school. They've never had a business before. They're just learning on the go. So if you've got information, whether it's digital marketing, whether it's sales, finance, lend them your experience, and
Yeah,
help
man.
them
Whew.
actually build up their business.
And bro, that could be that could be a whole nother live, right? Where we talk
Yeah.
about best practices in our own community, right? That global
Hmm.
majority, because we seem to hold this standard, right? Like you said, that
Hmm.
their ice is colder than his, over here. So it must be
Hmm.
better. And so that's the thing, it's that feedback loop, being able to have that feedback loop and having pride in yourself that when you tell me, hey Mike, you know, I really kind of think this is kind of out of place, just my opinion with your website or this or that or your business, your store, how about do this? And my brother, shout out to him, Jared Ford, that
Hmm.
he talked about one time having that solution where you say, hey, listen, first of all, I love what you're doing. You have a business, blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. These are some things that I feel can be improved. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, this is what I want to do. I want to help you. I want to send people your way. I want to make you boom, right? I want to share you this and that. But let's say 30 days or 60 days to improve upon some of these things is just subpar. The food being
Yeah.
cold, the service being horrible. I'm coming back, brother. I'm coming back, sister. And when I experience this awesome service, I'm telling everybody about you. I'm sending people your
Exactly.
way. I'm sharing every post you have. Instead of that thing where you have one bad experience with the black business, I'm
Mm.
done. But you can get the
Yeah,
same stuff over and over and over from the white businesses, from these chains and all this stuff, and you go back.
exactly.
So it's that again, having that white supremacy on us too, where we fall for the narrative of it's not bad, it's subpar, so we got to go back over here.
Mm, totally. And, just having an understanding again at how just general economics work, that's something I personally, put a lot of focus and attention to my own economics, my own business practices, everything. And it's having systems and processes. And one of the things that, you know, some black businesses don't have is the actual systems and processes. So the reason why their business may not perform is because they don't have like a blueprint, right? They don't have the strategy to do marketing, or they don't know how to really connect with their audience because times are changing. And if we don't actually communicate these thoughts and ideas, it's going to be difficult for them to actually build up. But it really comes down to understanding one person's spending is going to be somebody else's income. And that's all
Right.
you have to understand, because
Exactly.
then you can start to circulate, because you put the money into their business, they can reinvest into stock, into getting more products,
Yeah.
right? They can grow slowly. But it's really based on economical plans. It's based on educating each other, getting the correct education too. Not going. I'm not talking about going to school, get a degree, and then go work at Starbucks or go work
Right.
at Nike, or because you've just defeated the whole object. You've then got debt to learn something, and then you take in the skills, energy, human capital, and then you put in it into other corporations and making them rich. Whereas if you want to go to university, cool, no problem with that. But then at least take those skills, resources, and think, how can I actually build up around where I live? Because nobody wants to live in a pigsty. No one wants
Definitely.
to live in a.
Yep.
I've lived in some cool places, and the things that I've seen that they do in a short space of time, I'm talking like 25, 30 years. It's crazy when we're in, developed Western countries that have had resources for a while. But the thing is, like we said at the top of the call, the agendas, certain issues, they're
Hmm.
going towards a specific group. It's
Right.
not focused on the black group, which is what we've been discussing.
Right.
So it's on us to really understand what's actually going on, get an understanding of your surroundings and the game, because there's different levels to the game,
Hmm.
right? It's totally different levels to the game. And if we don't know how the politics works, we don't know how the education system can be utilized, how the economic system works, all of these things, you got to get it all so you can actually make the change. But an economical plan and economical focus, that's where it needs to be. It's not
Right.
social and things like that. Just leave other groups to whatever they're doing. They're already nice. They have businesses, they have assets, land, corporations that you getting jobs in. So you need to do your own thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just
Right.
my opinion.
Yeah, definitely, bro. And I agree with that, man. And so to come back around to that, even just uh, bringing it into summation, the title of this, "Speak Up," right?
Hmm.
For our non-black friends, family, associates, coworkers, and all that. Is that right now it feels almost like an attack that I have to do something. No, just be knowledgeable, right? Apply that
Hmm.
again, going back to that book, White Fragility by Dr. Robert
Hmm.
D'Angelo, just seeing the ways of how it's upheld by your silence or your irritants of a certain topic or your discomfort to it. That's the biggest thing.
Hmm.
And like you said, for us, it's economic. I challenge and I was speaking to a certain white person about this very thing, and it was like in one of the things and talking and discussing through it, it's like, okay, well,
Hmm.
do you know of any black business that you can support?
Hmm.
Do you know of someone that you can actually support and share? So that's one thing I challenge even to us, like you said, that economic impact. Maybe,
Yeah.
I'm writing this down for myself because as you was talking, man, it hit me again, and it's something that I do anyway,
Hmm.
all the
Yeah.
time, whether it's buying a book, buying a t-shirt. This t-shirt that
Hmm.
I'm wearing is from I call it family, friend of family,
Yeah.
a brother that was doing some stuff from his website, the
Mm-hmm.
necklace, your book, books from other Convos family and people that I've met. It's about that support. It's about sharing things, because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times it's the people that have no kind of connection to you that give you the most support, right? Your
True.
family and friends, you're like, hey, you're knocking on the
Mm-hmm.
door. I have a business. I have this. I have a
Mm-hmm.
book.
Yeah.
But someone across the way can support. So I think that's a challenge to find, three Black businesses. If we're talking
Yeah.
about this economic impact and flipping this whole narrative of this white supremacy and this silent, if you can just find three Black businesses to follow and support for a week at a time, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
sharing support, ordering something, seeing what you can, an idea, giving them feedback on what their product, giving them feedback on their marketing and what they do. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the way we start to turn this. And brother, in my opinion, I'm just going to say this. You may disagree. I talk to my wife. We talk about these conversations all the time, and I say I
Mm-hmm.
think it's happening, right? I think it's
Yeah.
happening as now we're in this information age. We've branched from one age to another age. We're in this information age, this age of Aquarius, to where more things are out there. So I think it's happening, but it's that slow process, right? We're the
Yeah.
microwave generation, microwave society. So
Of
we want it
course.
now. But I think it's
Yeah.
planting those seeds. Sometimes you're planting a seed that somebody will water 5 years later, a year later. So I
There
think
you
if we
go.
change our mindset, that's the power in it. And now we can make some real impact to make a change for the future, for our children, our children's children. Let's look at some things that's happened just in the last 5 to 10 years. Even if you look at
Mm-hmm.
America, the face of politics, the face of Capitol Hill, slowly
Mm-hmm.
changing. With
Yeah.
the last elections of Congress and Senate, we've seen the biggest influx of minority women. That
Mm-hmm.
title again, right? Minority women,
Yeah.
people, women of color, even
Mm-hmm.
white women. So
Those
I think
terms.
things are happening. I think we just need to stay on this path of discovery, self
Mm-hmm.
discovery first, right? To see what sits with you for Black people and our non Black people, our non Black friends, and then continuing to do these things right here, to network, to talk, to have these discussions. And now we can make a real impact that people will feel and that we can look back and say,
Definitely.
bro, you remember when we had that conversation, May of 2020? Look at us now.
Yeah. Exactly.
When we have five more Black friends, male and female, that have a business as well, that
Mm-hmm.
are doing these conversations and these topics. That's what I see, and that's what I think is real solutions to solidify our direction and where we want to go.
Totally. And I echo that. Is the communication is the key thing, because like just even with this conversation, sparking ideas for me. I'm sure it's sparking some
Yeah.
ideas for some people, hopefully. And this is where it starts. There is change happening. There's a lot of people that are actually really doing some cool things, like in different pockets and locations. But it's just getting that you can't really. Say, for example, it'd be difficult for me to start building stuff in Alabama because I'm not in Alabama. But
Right.
what I can do is, building leads here and then plug into Mike's network in Alabama because you're
Mhm.
there. Do you know what I mean? It's
Right.
like it's being strategic when it comes to these type of economic plans, and just really breaking it down, like knowing the history. Like, dude, just be a student, just see how, like, honestly, this book, I got Paranomics for my birthday, which I was just so happy about. Been trying to get hold of that for 18 months.
Right.
Couldn't get it. Got it as a gift, so very happy. My
Yeah.
book library has gone up in value.
Awesome.
Right? But I've been studying Claude Anderson anyway. But
Hmm.
this other book, like I said, The Rise and Fall of Great Powers, because I'm studying for the next one, it's like the context of what happened in other cultures. I'm also studying that too, so I've got an understanding of mine, but I'm seeing how it all correlates in those different time zones, right? But you have to study it to understand how to, like you said, you'll study the history to figure out your present and future, right?
Right.
You have to know what's actually gone on so you can fix it. So I think just encouraging people to to continue with education, and the right education, you know go deep on certain topics. Don't shy away from it because it affects you, whether you don't think it affects you or not. It affects you. And those videos that I saw, hence why we're having this conversation, that affected me.
Yeah,
I saw
definitely.
it and it was like that was a hard one. I'm not gonna
Right.
lie, that was a tough one. and I'm like seeing not enough people talking about that, and they can
Mhm.
see it.
Right.
So it's like, how can you see that and not send any type of comment? That
Yeah.
was my thing. So
Yeah, and I will say this too. It's like one of those things
mm,
where, in my work, being a life coach and for therapists out there and anybody watching in that field of personal services, in terms of that, is I had to check myself in recent years in telling people how they should respond, right? Because once
mm,
I tell you how you should respond to something that happens or affects you, then I'm telling
mm,
you how I would respond if I were you. So it's one
exactly.
of those things like, if,
1 second,
especially,
Mike.
go ahead.
Sorry. Instagram appreciates is going to be finishing, so I'm going to carry on with Mike, but appreciate you guys tuning in.
Thank you so
Um,
much, everybody on Instagram. We're wrapping up anyway, but thank y'all so much, everybody who tuned
yeah,
in on Instagram.
so it's going to go out in a minute, so I'm just saying goodbyes now.
Definitely
But,
awesome.
sorry, Mike, you were saying.
But yeah, and everybody, this, when we, even when it finishes on Instagram, we're going to share this on Facebook, and Limahl will have this copy as well as myself. So
Mm,
it will be there to be able to go back and watch and catch up, because this is long. We crossed over 2 hours now, but just some
yeah.
good stuff. I'm excited. So thank you
Mhm.
to your all your followers
Thank
on
you, guys.
Instagram,
Thank you.
all of mine who kind of jumped in as well. So thank you.
Hmm.
But yeah, and just with that, I think that progress and where you where you go with your mind and that forward thinking,
Hmm.
I think that's what it's all about, in this day and age and what we're facing, because like we say now, it goes back to that thing. We're in this whole information age, like you say, me being able to connect with you, to plug in with what you have going on, you plugging in what I have
Yeah.
going on. I think that's an amazing thing, the ability to do that. And if we use these resources that we have,
Hmm.
we could do more of it. So I think
Totally.
that's what's so great about that. But yeah, man, bro, I really appreciate you, man, for
Likewise.
just, oh, that's what I was saying. That's how I forget my thoughts, right? With that, people, especially those affected, right? The way you respond, or the way you react to something, because it's responsibility, right? It's the ability to respond. That's
Hmm.
when you take that responsibility. So the way you respond, that's your way of dealing with something. That's fine, right? It's
Yeah.
more so, like we talked about with this silence of those who call themselves your friends. They want to help you.
Hmm.
It's like, well, when something
Where's
really
that
affects me,
support?
where's the help? Where's the support, right?
Mm,
Yeah. So that's one thing I wanted to put out there, because a lot of times, I feel like, as a Black person, you don't know what the solution is. To move,
it's
to
hard.
act, to be silent, to war, peace.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for me, this is me. You may feel a little different, bro. This is me. I feel like we need all those facets. I
Hmm.
think we need the war. We need the peace. We need the agriculture. We need all of that stuff. That's a full, well-rounded system. And guess what? That is the system that white supremacy has and that they've built. It's
The
finances,
infrastructure.
education, war, sex. I forgot. It's 9 facets of white supremacy. That's another thing that Dr. Francis Cress Wilson and other teachers and speakers have broken down in their books and things over the years. So
Yeah.
I think that's where it's at, man. We gotta unlearn and relearn and just educate ourselves on some things.
100%. And yeah, I guess case in point for me is just like what you said there, these, how can I put it? These situations, they are going to be there. And we have to have those different, tools in the toolkit to deal with them, right? And I feel like even the conversation today, I hope, the people on Facebook and all the other platforms, are in agreement that, this was not there's no maliciousness
Right,
to
right,
the
definitely.
conversation. It's just having an open dialogue on some serious issues. Like I said, they affected us both. That's why
Yeah,
we're having a discussion.
I
And I
bet.
know from the lives we've been doing, I know there's a lot of other people that may not have the courage to really just come on alive and speak their thoughts because
Right.
they're afraid of being shut down or people canceling them, whatever that means, and just really just not like taking what they're saying seriously. Where these open dialogues actually help. I feel they actually help. We could be on hours on the solution side. I
Yeah,
think we
definitely.
got couple points there, but it was more about that element, people not speaking and having an opinion on these things that are in history.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
we can't just
Right.
sideskip that.
Yeah, definitely. So, bro,
Mhm.
real quick in conclusion, man, I want
Mhm.
to let me pull it up on Facebook. I just want to put
Sure.
in your site because I always one thing that me and my bro Brandon do, we do our bro studies, our little live
Yeah.
videos, is we'll
Hmm.
end with maybe what we have going on. So I know
Yeah.
it's let me put in your website in here,
Yeah.
texlamal.com.
Texlamal.com.
Make sure I put that in there because we want to
Appreciate
make
that.
sure in doing this, it's the same thing we're talking about, right? It's the
Yeah.
solution, it's that support, it's that acknowledgement or exposure to what's going on, right? With
Hmm.
everybody. So just explain a little bit about what you have going on. Talk about real quick, just kind of talk about the book, a summary of that. I want people to be able to know kind of what that background is and what you have going on because you have some. I want you to definitely mention your Saturday, your webinar, and anything
Yes.
that you have going on right now that you want to put out there. I'm going to put my
Cool.
website in there as well.
Appreciate that. Well, yes, as Mike said, thank you, texlamal.com. I just made it simple gateway for the things that I'm working on at present and that I'm talking about. So luxurious chores, how to overcome extreme action. Um, that is a book that I put out earlier this year, and it was my first title. It was a book that I had wanted to write for, I would say, at least 3 years. And essentially, I used my career, the entertainment business, which is where I was at previously, as a timeline and how I overcame adversity, took action to get the things that I truly wanted. That's what the book is about. But more importantly, there's lessons, the wins, the losses, how I went
Mm,
from Leeds, to Hollywood and came back and then was in the Middle East and in London and Geneva and all of these, adventures and how I overcome these, tough challenges. And more, I guess it's like the reflections to a degree and just really, summarizing my own head of of how I actually did that. I just poured those feelings and thoughts out, and that's what the book is really entailing.
yeah.
The other things that I have going on, the Mills Institute of Education and Economics. So, based on the book and previous works, I kept getting asked from people, Limahl, how did you do this, and what made you move here, and et cetera, et cetera. So, over time, when people was asking for certain assistance, I decided to create a system that could actually help people get the things that they want. So I've been having some cool results, mainly working in the Black community, which is my community, single mothers, specifically helping them get into business, but more importantly, just shifting how they think, as you said, about certain things because they don't have maybe all the access to the data that I do, working in finance and investment now. So I'm really using my experience again and put it into a system where anybody can pick up and use. So that's one thing that we're growing, using some smart curriculums, digital curriculums, things
Hmm.
that are relevant to people today that can help them get certain skills and, you know, come up to a good standard. So that's the main thing. Um, Secondary, I'm working on a fintech startup, so financial technology, with a colleague of mine who has years in banking, working at JP Morgan, companies like that in Switzerland, and a good friend of mine. We've known each other a long time, and we partnered up to again solve some of these or some of the financial challenges in the community, but from a technological standpoint, because the fintech wave is something that is already there, but it's one of these industries again where people are not focusing on. So
Yeah.
we're taking the lead on that. We're working on this project, and as things unfold, I'll be sharing more stuff. But really excited about it because I know what type of impact it can have within the Black community. We're starting in the UK, obviously due to financial laws, regulations. It's easier for us to start here,
Hmm.
but in the future, we would like to grow that, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get overseas and start plugging in with some of my black brothers and sisters and
Right.
kings and
Definitely.
queens. No other groups, just black. So
Right.
yeah, they're the main main projects that I'm working on
Yeah,
right
and I encourage people to really check Limahl out on Instagram. It's Limahl Mills.
now.
Check
Yeah,
him out on Instagram
man.
because bro, you pretty much going live like almost every day, and I love that because you're building. You are totally flipping the algorithm, right? You're owning that thing, and I love it. And I love how you call for interaction and some stuff. And I want to just tell you, I'm learning some stuff from you of how you do. And with everything you have, that I love your 2030 vision and that technology and where it's going. And just if y'all plug into him and just see his Instagram lives and just the way he uses technology and what he's doing and his impact, I think it's awesome. And
I
you know,
appreciate
you
that,
have a
brother.
lot of layers to you. So I want people to definitely check you out, plug into what you got going on.
Appreciate that. We'll be
Yeah, for
happy to
sure, man.
welcome more of the American family across.
Yeah,
Cause
definitely,
I,
definitely get this connection going.
100%, 100%. And again, I just want to say thank you as well to yourself. And like I said, since we connected, there's certain people I meet in life where I'm like, I know we're gonna, be cool for a very long time because
Right.
it's just, just as they say, great minds think alike, and it doesn't take, you know, millions of conversations to strike up a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that, because most of my good friends I rarely see because they're always in different parts of the world. And yeah, like I said, bro, it's been a really good conversation. So thank you
Right.
for hosting
And
it on
and
your
two,
platform.
just the impact of that right there. Look, I tell people I have to almost shut myself down because here we are approaching 2 hours and 20 minutes, but I love to talk, and
Mm,
it's that energy, right?
mhm.
You would think that we planned this for a week or something, talking for 2 hours about. We didn't. You saw something yesterday. You reached out to me, and
Yeah.
overnight we talked a little bit this morning before we started, and it came. And it's that mindset of like minds, and that's why I tell
Mm,
people, when I say the universe will align to give you what you want, will, and work for. When you put out
mhm,
the energy that you want to see, it
mhm.
comes back to you. So you start connecting with
Definitely.
those people. And the people who I've gravitated to and connected with the most with even convos are those
Mm,
who are moving and doing some stuff. I've been plugged
yeah.
into some, think tanks and some helping some people out and doing some things. And just again, I've been on the app for, I don't know, November. So since November, however long that
Okay.
is,
Yeah.
not long at all.
Yeah.
And you and
Eight
I have been
months. Yeah.
connected maybe 4 or 5 months of that.
Mm,
So yeah, I
definitely.
definitely I enjoy that, and I appreciate you too. And as for me, again, pnzforlife.com, that's my website. I am still running my stay home sale. It's 30-minute life coaching sessions for
Mhm.
$25. I'm still running that. I'll run that through mid-June. So if anybody wants to plug into that, and it doesn't have to be, what would I talk about? I don't have anything right now. In this time with quarantine, again, I talked about that importance of that just social contact. And
Yeah.
a lot of things, it's pressure busts a pipe, right? So a lot of things are built up. So having that outlet to be able to speak to or talk to or release some things that is an unbiased ear. I've
Yeah.
even talked to some people that are like close to being family, which is that's a no-go, right? But I can remove myself from that. I can remove myself that relationship just to be able to hear
Hmm.
some things. So that's still going
Definitely.
on. And then I put the link now, again, on this StreamYard, is just a YouTube link, but that is the link in the Facebook video to my stay home sale on YouTube. So you can email me if you want to get involved with that. And
Cool.
then last thing, let me put my link tree in there so
Hmm.
people can see everything
Connect up.
going on. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, y'all make sure you connect with. Thank you everybody who came in, popped in, who's going to come back later. Thank you to everybody who just took the time to hear this conversation. This was just something
Definitely,
that
bro.
was thought of by us, and we
On the
wanted to
spot.
do it, and hey, it worked out. So again, thank you to you, bro, for just reaching out, and I
Appreciate it.
look forward to where this relationship goes and us building some things, man. Like I say, that
100%.
that connection across the pond.
Yeah. Large pun, bro. It's
Yeah,
cool.
that's right. So
We
thank
got
you,
this.
bro. I appreciate it. And to everybody,
Thank you
we
too.
appreciate you. Peace.
Yes.
As always, y'all take care.
All right. See you later. Bye.